Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to colinslaststand.com. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode 100. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined as always by Chris, Century Mark Raygun. Chris, thank you for joining me today. How are you?
I am doing well.
Yeah, it is the 100th episode. Let's bring a lot of energy today.
Yeah.
To our 100th episode of the show.
100 episodes.
It's incredible. I think we launched the show in early July of 2018, so we've not missed a week, and therefore we are recording this in late May, publishing this on Patreon in late May, and here we are 100 episodes later. So thank you all for being there for us and for supporting us, whether you support us on Patreon at patreon.com/colinslaststand or free feeds. To celebrate the milestone, we're not going to do a special type of episode because I feel like I would be annoyed as a listener by that because then you wouldn't get a normal episode.
Yeah.
I hate that shit. Instead, what we're going to do is do a normal episode as we would, and then at the end, we're going to stitch 100 full minutes of listener Q&A. So this will probably be the longest episode we've ever done. And so you get the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
And I'm really looking forward to doing that at the end of the show. So again, thank you so much for your kindness, your generosity, and your support of our show and all things Colin's Last Stand. Please review the show if you listen on free feeds, share it with your friends and family, help us find a new audience, all of these things, and support us on Patreon for exclusive episodes we do each week called Sacred Symbols Plus, as well as the ability to submit your questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas to our show, early ad-free access to the show, you can get your name in the credits, and much more. Sacred Symbols Plus last week was a mailbag. We had a lot of fun with that. Now, this coming week, Chris, it's a little complicated for Sacred Symbols Plus because Bloomberg has reported that there might be a PlayStation 5 event, or it looks like there will be a PlayStation 5 event from Sony, maybe even on Wednesday, June 3rd.
Yeah.
So just a couple of days after this goes to free feeds. So what we're going to do, and here's what I would like to do, is we're going to record Sacred Symbols Plus on Sunday and publish it on Sunday and make it available to all patrons. So I won't, just as a little nice gesture, because usually we lock it behind the $5 tier for a few days and then let it go to everybody on Patreon. Since the event is so close, rumored to be so close, we don't know. There is no announcement of it yet, so it could be wrong.
Yeah.
We will do a predictions episode for it and make that available as soon as possible. I know people are excited for us to get the Final Fantasy VII Remake. We do have to kind of talk about that because I just don't know that this is going to happen anytime soon. And so I wanted to present the audience and you, Chris, with I think 3 different options for a Final Fantasy VII Remake spoiler cast and review discussion Sacred Symbols Plus episode. The first option is we just don't do it because we're kind of 2 months past the release date. I don't know that that's really necessary, but that's one option.
Right.
The second option is that you and I do it later in the summer. Or the third option is that we get Dustin and Maddie to do it. And since they were so well received with the Persona 5 spoiler cast, they might want to do Final Fantasy VII Remake too. So those are the 3 options that I'm presenting to everyone right now. So I'm amenable to feedback on this particular issue. You guys can let me know on Twitter or on Patreon. You can DM me, whatever you want to do. I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer, but I can't speak for Chris, but and I'm sure Chris is very busy too. He has a bunch of things that he needs to do, but I'm just so far behind on other things that I need to do that this game is kind of just slowly falling down my backlog.
Yeah.
And with Knockback in particular, which is my retro and nostalgia podcast I do with my brother, the audience votes every month on topics they want us to do. And they voted for us to do Mass Effect recently, BioShock Infinite recently, and Horizon. Mm-hmm. And we need to get all of those done as well. So I just don't have the bandwidth. I just finished playing Earthbound over a few days too on SNES. Yeah. So I just don't have the bandwidth to fit all of these things in, and I kind of have to cut something out. And so I kind of like the option of having Maddie and Dustin do it, but I want to hear from the audience because people really liked their Persona 5 spoiler cast And so we would like to call them out from the bullpen, and maybe that will be the best way to deliver the goods, and we can talk about the game when we actually get back to finishing it. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea.
Yeah, I do too. I'm fine with that, but I want to hear from the audience. Let me know and let Chris know what you guys think. And Bloomberg, again, this Wednesday, June 3rd date for the PS5 event that Bloomberg reports, we're going to kind of try to just plan Sacred Symbols Plus around that, tell you what we think is going to happen. Hopefully we'll have some more news and maybe a confirmation by the time we actually record. I want to give it a couple more days just to see what happens, because I would doubt that they would just do this out of nowhere without talking about it first. But maybe they would. I don't know.
Yeah, it would be kind of surprising, especially given they seem to be hyping up The Last of Us quite a bit, and it would be a little bit strange to me if they just decided to just have this big, oh, by the way, pay attention to this thing that won't be out until well after this important game comes out. It would be kind of shocking if they did that to me, but like, hey, I don't know. It's a weird time.
It is. I guess we'll have to just prepare for this possibility in the best way we can. It is around the time that E3 would occur. It's really the week before. And that June 3rd / June 4th date has actually been floating around for a while. So there's got to be some sort of, I don't know, there's got to be something to the rumor. There have been other people talking about how they were even planning on doing something much earlier, and that it kind of all got thrown into chaos. And by the way, one of the things I saw was from your friend, Alana Pierce, who had said on a show she was on that their biggest contention, I guess, at Sony is that they don't want to do something lo-fi and cheap looking, which is exactly the thing I was criticizing Microsoft for doing with their Xbox event. While the games looked cool, it looked like a fucking Al-Qaeda video, basically, when they were, when they were talking to the actual people. So
yeah, Phil Spencer's in a black hood.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That's insane.
It was like in 480p. It just looked horrible. So I actually am sympathetic to Sony's want to have this look pristine, because you only get one chance, especially with this thing, to come out swinging first. They've done their articles, they've shown the controller, they've talked a little bit about it, they had the Mark Cerny Power Hour, but this is really their first chance to talk about it in a grand way. And so you don't want it to look like some budget shit that I made on fucking Adobe Premiere. So just something to keep in mind. And of course, we've been talking about this for a while, but we actually got official sales figures finally out of Sony. Twin Breaker, our video game, has surpassed 10,000 copies sold on PlayStation 4 and Vita. So thank you so much for that. If you haven't bought it yet, please do. $9.99, cross-buy, 2 platinum trophies, all of that. The physical copies of the game, as I said last week, are shipping now. A lot of people have already gotten them. I've been getting pictures on Instagram and on Twitter of them, and we will have more to discuss soon about ports, because the game will be coming to Switch, Xbox One, and PC before the end of the year. All right, Chris, so let's talk a little bit about episode 100. By the way, we got a ton of letters from the audience, as we do each week, but a lot of them were just congratulating us, thanking us, asking us some questions about the show. So I read everything, and I appreciate that. We can't obviously use everything that you've submitted to us, but I did want to read a couple of these things before we get into what we're playing and the news and all of this. So Kevin White wrote into us on Patreon and said, hey guys, first off, congratulations on 100 episodes. Thank you, Kevin. Colin has been my favorite gaming podcaster for as long as I can remember, and getting to know and love Chris over these last 2 years has been a joy. Isn't that nice? My question is this. How did the podcast actually happen? I know Colin has said he was attracted to Chris because he's an outsider in games media. I'm not. Chris isn't an outsider in games media. He's just an outsider to games media. So that was what was attractive to me about him. But I am just wondering about all the other inner workings about how this all came to be. Thank you for these past 2 years, and here's to many more. Thank you, Kevin. So, Chris, you want to talk a little bit about? It was pretty easy to get this going, I think. Yeah,
I think so. I think you had me on Fireside Chats, I think. And then that's I think how we started talking properly.
Right.
And then you proposed this to me, or you proposed this to me in a, where the hell were we? We were in Santa Monica somewhere at like some bar place.
Yeah, it's called The Misfit. It's this place near the Santa Monica Pier that is actually really good. It's a little touristy, but I like the drinks there a lot. Yeah. So that's where I brought you. You were going to the beach that day, I think, with Lacey. And so I had kind of, maybe even Alana was there too. I don't know. I
think so. Yeah, it was me, Lacey, Alana, and Bunty. We're going to the beach that day.
Right. And so I lived on the beach in Santa Monica. So Chris came and we walked to this restaurant And I really just wanted to get drunk and talk. Chris didn't even want to drink or eat, as far as I recall. And so I pitched Chris on the podcast, but as I think we've discussed in the past, I actually assumed Chris wouldn't want to do a PlayStation podcast and would want to instead do a generalist podcast. And it was Chris's decision that we did a PlayStation podcast instead, which would probably be surprising to people.
Yeah, I hadn't considered. I totally forgot that was actually my call.
It was.
Yeah, because I remember being confused at first because I was like, I just tweet about Halo constantly. What a strange choice for a PlayStation show. But I think I knew it's at a certain level that there's so many general gaming shows, even just beyond podcasts, that I figured having one that was more specific would be a little bit smarter as far as, just how to market a show and how to get a show traction. I think you attract a very interestingly loyal audience when you kind of focus in on a specific thing or a specific aspect of a culture. And I felt like PlayStation was a pretty good subsidiary, especially because of your experience with the brand and my loose experience with it. I think I have a pretty decent history with PlayStation, although it's not exclusive to it. I just thought it was a pretty good idea.
Yeah, I think you made the right choice, and it was a good choice. And so I think that was in May of 2018, and then we launched in July, like I said, named it Sacred Symbols, and here we are 2 years later. So, or almost 2 years later. It's really technically, what would it be, 148 weeks later? No, what am I saying? 98. What am I saying? 100 weeks later, it would be 104 weeks if it was a full year.
Right.
Jesus Christ, man. I have no idea how to use numbers at all. But so yeah, that was what was attractive to me about Chris. Kevin was his outsider nature. I wanted someone that was a little younger than me, and Chris is almost 10 years younger than me. And I wanted someone that just played different games than I did. I think that was one of the problems, if you want to call it that, with Podcast Beyond and PS I Love You, the versions of those shows that I were on or was on, which was that Greg and I played a lot of the same stuff. So we were missing a lot of things. And it seems from the outside that Greg has actually started to play a lot more different stuff and kind of plays more multiplayer games now and stuff like that, which is great. But that wasn't the way it was when we were playing. And so,
right.
And doing those shows. So that was what was really attractive about Chris. And I think that that's worked out really nicely because it's allowed us to we can't talk to everyone about everything. I don't think we're going to have like a really authoritative sports game.
Yeah, probably not.
Thing or racing games or whatever. But it just allows us to focus more on this 360-degree circle. And so that was what was attractive to me about Chris and why we started doing the show together. So 2 years later, here we are.
Yeah, and we have different nostalgias too, I feel like. Just because of the age difference, I feel like when you said that you were surprised that Crash was going to do well, I was kind of surprised that you thought that, because that was inconceivable to me that Crash wouldn't do well because of how important he was when I was a kid to like literally everybody. Yeah,
he wasn't important to me at all. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I can't know everything. I think I know a lot, but I like to kind of be self-deprecating in that way too. And it's not really self-deprecation, but more honest with the things that I get wrong or the faults that I have. Final Fantasy VII Remake is probably the most recent and notable example, and we'll talk about that game a little later. But I do feel like it's nice to have someone that can fill in some of these dark spots for me. And like, it's a really good point too, like you said, Chris, that we both have these different nostalgias. I'm really rooted in Nintendo nostalgia, actually. That's what I grew up with. PS1 didn't come out until I was 11 years old. So, and I didn't get it until I was 13, almost 13.
Yeah.
So I grew up on NES and weaned myself on the NES and the SNES and later N64. And I was obsessed with the GameCube and all that. So we definitely have different places. And I was also really into JRPGs and all that kind of stuff.
It's a completely different upbringing, I guess.
Yeah. So I think that's what makes our show good, and I think attractive to a lot of people as well.
I think so too.
So yeah. So thank you, Kevin, for your support. Destin wrote into us. Probably not Destin Legary. It's not spelled right, but says, "Hey, Colin and Chris, my very first question is a meaningfully but simple question." I think you mean meaningful but simple. What does CLS or Sacred Symbols mean to you? So we'll just keep this as Sacred Symbols. Other than the obvious financials, I know it gives you income to buy a house and employ Chris and Dustin, etc. But what does the show mean to you, and why do you do it? For me, I think of Colin as someone who did a PlayStation podcast in an IGN brick room beyond, that's right, and had half of the gaming community backlash you because of a tweet. And after all that, you went on your own and started a company that does amazing content for tens of thousands of people. You have an amazing redemption story, and I'm happy to support someone who deserves the success that they have accomplished. And for Chris, someone who I had no clue existed, who I now can't get enough of. What does this show mean to you? Thank you, too, for everything you do. Thank you, Destin. Deston.
Deston.
Chris, what does Sacred Symbols mean to you? What does the brand mean to you? How has it helped you connect with people? And are you pleased with how it's doing and how it's kind of garnered you some new fans and all of this?
Yeah, I think I think being tapped into the podcast space in general is just very, very helpful because it's a completely different style of content than I'm used to doing. Like I specifically focused on very highly edited long form projects that used to take ages, and kind of getting something that was like easy to, well, not easy, but easier to put together and just sort of get something out every week. It was a nice guiding kind of principle and a nice kind of structure to have, because before that there were times where it was like May and I thought it was like January because like my structure was just so completely destroyed. And I had no idea like what day it was ever. And just so having like that structure in place and that kind of like discipline was like super helpful, even just in helping me pick up the Snark Tank again and making that a weekly thing. I think it's discipline, just structure. It keeps me sane.
Yeah, it's something to look forward to. I mean, because other than the holiday episodes where we go away for a little while, we really do record these every week. And so we have to stay disciplined and be in touch and do things regularly. And I'm really rigorous and OCD with my schedule, not in my like personal schedule. I wake up in the fucking middle of the day basically, but with the podcast schedules, I just do not miss weeks with podcasts. And
yeah,
it's really amazing to me how many people do podcasts and then don't understand that that's like such a key facet to their success or not to their success. It's like, people wonder sometimes, like, why doesn't my podcast do better, or how do I get an audience? And I'm like, well, the content's got to be great, and I think the show is great. But I also think that you have to understand that if you're going to deliver something, deliver it. People rely on you, and even if they're not paying for it, they rely on you. I know that because I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I'm really disappointed when some of these shows miss a week or are late, inexplicably late, and there's no communication. It's really important. So I think that's a major reason why not only the show, but the Colin's Last Stand Patreon is just so popular, because people know that they can count on us. And we used to do the show recorded on Monday and published on Tuesday. Now we record on Thursdays and publish on Fridays, which I think was a really smart decision unilaterally made by me. And so, yeah, I just want to let everyone know that we appreciate it. The show means a lot to me. It's the third PlayStation podcast I've done. And it's funny because out of the three most popular PlayStation podcasts that have ever been created, which are Podcast Beyond, PS I Love You XOXO, and this show, I've been on all three of them. And I'm the only connecting tissue between all three of those shows.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. I joined Podcast Beyond after it started and was on it for 315 episodes or something like that. And I founded PS I Love You and was on it for its first run. And I founded this show and I've been on every episode. So it's pretty cool to be ingratiated with an audience and with an ecosystem and know something so well. And that's one of the things I take really a lot of pride in. A lot of people, not a lot of people, but some people ask, why am I not more agnostic? Why don't I play things on other platforms and stuff? And it's because, like, I know what it takes to know PlayStation like I know it. And that's part of the reason you listen to this show. That's what buttresses this show is Chris's humor and his insights and my insight and humor, but also the knowledge that I bring. And that can only come from completely surrounding yourself with something for many years. And that's why I really enjoy doing it. And it keeps me honest as a gamer, because the game won't function if I don't play things.
Right.
And don't put myself out there. Like, even with, we'll talk about the Last of Us State of Play in a little while. I wasn't going to watch that. And then I was like, I have to watch this because it's something that people are going to expect us to talk about. I really didn't want to watch it, but I did. And so it's cool. It's cool to be in this environment and to know that people rely on it and enjoy it. And it's a great honor that so many people are even willing to pay for something that they can get for free. So it's really quite heartening. And I know that there are a lot of content creators out there, a lot of podcasts, a lot of options. So all of those things being true and all those things being equal, it's really remarkable that we've built what we've built. and I'm proud of it. So thank you everyone for your support and your kindness of our show. Now, Corey Christensen has an interesting question here. He says, if 100 Collins fought 100 Chris's, who would win? 100 Collins versus 100 Chris's. Chris, who do you think would win a fight between 100 Collins and 100 Chris's? I think there's a lot to say here, actually.
I feel like if there were 100 of me and they were all the same me, I feel like they would be too distracted by the existential crisis to really fight. I feel like they would be confused and they would be like, which one is, okay, which is the prime one? Like, we got to figure this out. Like, this can't go unaddressed. You know, I like, because I know I wouldn't feel comfortable if I was if I walked into like a circuit city and it was just filled with me. You know, I'd be like, okay, this is a situation that requires an immediate answer. Chances are no answer will be satisfying. So I would imagine that I don't know if I would fight. I would be too concerned that like I might endanger the prime one and then maybe like cause some kind of hive mind shutdown. Interesting.
I didn't expect that answer. Yeah.
I would suggest all 99 other Chris's go completely separate ways, like in completely different compass directions, and just walk until they found something worth staying in.
Interesting. It's like the Hunger Games when they're at the cornucopia and then everyone just runs in opposite directions into the woods.
Yeah.
But there are 100 Chris's instead of whatever it is, 24 people in the Hunger Games. But yeah, because I was expecting, well, I don't know what I was expecting, but I fear you're small, you're spry, you're in better shape than I am. So I feel like I'd have a little bit of trouble, or 100 of me would have a little bit of trouble with you. I think I'm not like especially talented in any physical way. So I don't know that I would have really much of an advantage at all in this 100 versus 100 melee.
I am vaguely agile. Is how I would describe myself. As far as like physical capabilities, I'm vaguely agile. You know?
Interesting. Yeah, I used to be really athletic. I still am athletic, like I can pick things up and play and run around and do all that kind of stuff, but I just don't have the agility anymore and the stamina. And as I've said on this show, I think I always get surprised when I like run or move really quick, like how much more weight I carry on my body these days. Like
yeah.
I still am in this 18-year-old mentality or this 21-year-old mentality where I should be moving like really quickly, but I don't anymore. I don't move very quickly at all.
I just recently got that feeling of like whenever you turn too fast and it hurts. Like if you like you know how like birds can just like swoop their heads around at like Mach 10 and it's totally fine. But like if I turn like slightly quickly, like I have to make sure that I don't turn so fast that my brain crashes into my skull. I feel like that didn't used to be a problem when I was a child. Like I could like turn like super quick and be like Spider-Man level like alert. But now I just like if I hear a noise behind me, I'm like, it's probably fine.
Did you see that thing with the Black Widow spider that those kids let? There's like these kids that let a Black Widow spider bite them to see if they would become Spider-Man.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then they had to be hospitalized.
That's great. I love a wholesome story like that.
I know, that's ridiculous. Yeah, so I feel the same way. I got up out of bed too quick yesterday and I had to like sit back down because I like got lightheaded. I'm like, geez, man, I just wanted to get up and, well, I was getting up to eat. So I guess maybe my body was trying to tell me something.
Yeah, I get migraines like all the time. It sucks.
I know. Yeah, you were telling me that yesterday. There's no rhyme or reason to that.
No, my dad just gets them. I think it's just like a what is it? A family
genetic.
Yeah, it might be a family thing because I know my dad gets headaches all the time. Sucks.
Yeah, my mom gets them too, and one of my sisters. So it could be a genetic thing. I don't see any. Well, I'm sitting in a wooden chair, so I'll knock on that. I still have never really experienced that. So she's like really sensitive to sound and light.
Ooh.
And all this kind of stuff. Yeah, it's no good. Mark Elfering wrote in with another similar questions. He says, hello, friends. In honor of the 100th episode, if 109-year-olds rushed you in a field, how many could you take out with a baseball bat before being overwhelmed? So we're in the middle of a field with two baseball bats, one each.
Okay.
There are 100 apparently unarmed 9-year-olds that are rushing us. How many could we take out before we are overwhelmed, Chris?
This is in a realm of hypothetical legality, right? There's no like, this isn't like I'm just going about my day and then 109-year-olds rush me.
Right. You assume this is some sort of maybe dystopian test.
Right. It's like an arena, like a VR arena or something. Okay.
Right.
How many? 9-year-olds are pretty, like they're pretty durable. I feel like 9 is like that age where it gets to the point where it's like, okay, you can take a hit and like you could flip on your back and land on your frail little spinal column and you'll probably be all right. So that would be kind of tricky. I feel like probably 25. Like if I'm really if I'm really in like a survival state where I'm like, you know, putting my weight behind everything and like actually like trying. But
well, it reminds me of like square attacks versus triangle attacks. I feel like you have to do triangle attacks because there's so many enemies that if you do a triangle attack, you're going to get caught swinging hard and you're going to get taken out quicker as opposed to doing more chip damage to these various 9-year-olds. And I don't know, if we were together, we can go back to back. That would at least cover north, south, or east and west or whatever. And then hope for the best. But I think that we would get overwhelmed pretty quickly. I think that if they were all coming at us simultaneously, so not like a wave of a few and then a wave of a few, because I think then we could survive probably indefinitely. But if they were all really rushing us at the same time in a Braveheart-like situation, I think we would probably be fucked before we even clobbered 10 of these 9-year-olds with a baseball bat.
See, I feel like I would do the car thing. I would do the Dead Rising car thing where you'd stand on top of a car and slow, because they have to climb at that point, right?
Right.
So like then they would have to climb up onto the car. They're not in a fighting stance if they're climbing. And by definition, if they're in a climbing stance and they're like slowly trying to climb this car, they're going to be fewer of them at a time. So I feel like if that was the case, if there was a car nearby, I feel like I could at least get through 50 of them. 50,
yeah. It's an intense sort of situation. Are these 9-year-olds? See, I have a question for Mark. Are these 9-year-olds? Are they all like similar? Like, are they the same type of 9-year-old, or is it like we have a few really stout, slow moving, but hardy 9-year-olds, and we have a few athletic, quick 9-year-olds that might not have a lot of HP?
Right. Are there any special infected?
Right. Exactly.
Probably.
Do they have like lieutenants and bosses? Like, are there like, different palette swaps?
Oh yeah,
for the different characters.
Well, if this is American kids too, then there's like probably a higher chance that more of them will be overweight, right? That's probably like a statistic.
Right. A third of them probably, I think would probably be overweight. Maybe a few even obese or morbidly obese. So
there's too many facets. We need a proper like stat chart for this.
We need more information.
Yes,
is what we need. All right, Mark. Well, thank you for that uplifting question. We'll get to more of your questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas at the end of the show, and of course, interspersed into the news. But before we get into the news, let's talk about what we're playing. Chris, you say nothing, not a damn thing.
Yeah.
You're not playing anything these days. What's happening? You've been doing a lot of videos actually recently and getting that out.
Yeah, I've been trying to get a lot of videos out this month. I still have one more that I got to pump out before the month ends to meet a sponsor deadline. And also just like moving and trying to get the apartment in order before they come in here and they inspect the apartment and write me up for shit that I already explained to them and they never fixed. I'm sure that's probably gonna happen.
The worst.
Yeah, I'm sure. Dude, I told you about the mold, right? That they just painted over.
No.
We had a big mold spot in our closet, and they walked into my room for about 10 minutes and then left, and I was like, "Is it done?" And they were like, "Yes." And then they ran away. I was like, okay. They just painted over. It's insane.
Good black mold. That's a good story.
Yeah, it's great. It's wonderful. But yeah, so it's just been kind of hectic. I've just had a lot of work and a lot of responsibilities. I would have been like jumping all the way through Final Fantasy VII again because I recently got a huge itch to play it. I haven't even really made progress in Metal Gear Solid 2. I've been so friggin' swamped.
It's one of those times. I feel the same way. I've been playing a little bit of Trails of Cold Steel still on Vita. I really like that game. There's something really charming about it. Again, it is a kind of a budget Persona, but it's a little more up my alley, I think. And the game I was talking about earlier, Earthbound, which is an SNES game from 1995, I played it all the way through on my SNES Classic. I actually streamed a bunch of it on Twitch, so people can check that out. But I had to play that for Knockback, so that was about a 30-hour time investment. So if I wasn't playing Earthbound, then I probably would have played something else. But now I'm moving on to Mass Effect, the original Mass Effect, which I've not played since it came to, I played it a little bit when it came to PS3. So that was 2012, I think, or 2011. No, it was 2012.
Yeah.
And before that, I wrote the strategy guide for it. And that was 2007 or 2008, something like that. So yeah, it's been a while since I've played Mass Effect. I'm actually really looking forward to it, but I have to play it on PS3, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Because there is no way to play it on PS4. So I'll have more to say about all of that. But go listen to Knockback about Earthbound if you'd like. Have you ever played Earthbound by chance?
No, I genuinely don't know what Earthbound really is. I've only seen the boss fights with I think Gygas, and I think is his name.
Yep, that's right. Yep.
And I know Ness and Lucas from Super Smash Brothers, because that's where I've seen the most of them. But I know nothing, and I know it's called Mother in Japan, I think.
Yep, it is. Yeah, so Lucas is the protagonist of the third game, which we never got here. That was a Game Boy Advance game. Ness is the protagonist of the second one. It's just a weird, quirky JRPG, and we did 3 hours on it, and we talked about it extensively. I'm glad that I played it all the way through because I had never done so. But I gotta say, and this is a PlayStation podcast, so we won't pontificate too much about a Nintendo game. I don't really understand why that game is so beloved. It's really weird. Like, it's really to me, and we talk. Dagan and I, my brother, talk about it a lot. Where I don't think this game's very good, and
really,
I don't think audiences. Yeah, I don't think it's a really. There's on SNES. There are so many good JRPGs and action role-playing games. Whether you're talking about Final Fantasy II, Final Fantasy IV, Secret of Mana, Secret of Evermore, Seventh Saga, Chrono Trigger. I mean, these are all games that are exponentially better than Earthbound. So if people want to go listen to more about that, it's on Patreon right now. It'll be free for all next week. And we'll talk about Mass Effect soon. We're going to talk about Horizon soon. We're going to talk about BioShock Infinite soon. So a lot of games I need to play. Thanks for continuing to vote for things that take me fucking 50 hours a piece to play. You may think that the air outside of your home is dirty, but the air inside of your home can be pretty filthy too. That's because microscopic allergens, bacteria, mold, dust, and other stubborn pollutants can easily make it through your doors, windows, and even via that HVAC unit you're wisely blasting during these early summer months. Breathing all of this stuff in can drive your body crazy, especially when it comes to your lungs, and your lungs, as it turns out, are vital to protect. That's where Molecule's state-of-the-art air purifiers come into play, helping eliminate pesky indoor pollutants that persistently follow you around and cause all sorts of health problems. Molecule's air purifiers use well above my pay grade photoelectrochemical oxidation technology, not to merely capture airborne pollutants, but to outright destroy them. I live in LA County here in California, which has so much air pollution that it looks like Beijing in 1985. It would make perfect sense that many local airborne pollutants would make their way into my apartment, which is where the Molecule air purifier comes in. Whether you're talking about the aforementioned mold and bacteria, or even viruses, this so-called Picotech does one thing and one thing only: makes the air inside your house or apartment cleaner and healthier to breathe. It's shocking, but true. The American EPA tells us that indoor air pollution can be a staggering 5 times worse than it is outdoors. And since we spend so much time inside of our domiciles, especially these days, it's essential that you tend to the air quality around you. While HEPA filters merely capture pollutants, and while that technology hasn't been updated since literally the Korean War, Molecule's Pico technology acts as your best defense against allergy season, and whatever other airborne particulates may come your way. To see which Molecule air purifier is best for you, simply head to molecule.com. That's MOLEKULE.com, and peruse their various options, including the Molecule Air for larger rooms in your home, and the Molecule Air Mini for smaller rooms. Better yet, if you enter the code SYMBOLS10 at checkout, you can get 10% off your first purifier order. Not too shabby. Again, to clean up your indoor air quality, help you breathe better and easier, and bring a little bit of much-needed health into your life, head to molecule.com and use the checkout code SYMBOLS10. All right, Chris, let's get into the news.
Yeah.
There's a lot of it, but I want to start with us talking about The Last of Us 2 State of Play. So let me get my notebook here. I have 2 notebooks going for no particular reason. On this notebook, I have my notes for the show. On the other, I have notes just for the State of Play. So as we all know, The Last of Us Part 2 comes out June 19th, exclusively to PS4. We're really excited. At least I am. Maybe Chris isn't. There's a 23.5 minute, 23:33 in particular, video, State of Play video that shows off the game. And I just watched it a little bit before we were recording because I hadn't had a chance to do so.
Yeah.
And I am completely blown away by this game. I think this game, and I tweeted this, that the game looks just outrageously, the word I would use is superior to so many games, virtually any game, that it's hard for me to wrap my mind around how someone, unless you're not a fan of this type of game, like third-person action and little stealth games and post-apocalyptic stuff, I get that, but generally speaking, I don't know how you can look at this game and not be outrageously excited. Like, I could feel it inside of me when I was watching this. I'm like, I can't fucking wait to play this game, to explore these environments, to meet these characters, to have this combat and do these upgrades and find different ways through the game and play it multiple times. I'm just so blown away by it. So I'm really curious what you thought of this state of play and if it's changed your more lukewarm approach to The Last of Us Part 2.
Yeah, I feel like I'm still looking forward to it. I feel like the stuff that they showed today was entirely fine as far as like a gameplay perspective goes, because I feel like we've seen this kind of, like the last time they showed an extensive look of gameplay, I feel like we saw a decent amount of this where like you could crawl under things and explaining how you could use the environment in different ways and just like kind of the stealth options and the jumping and that kind of stuff, which I'm a pretty big fan of. I like any game that allows me a decent amount of verticality. I'm a huge fan of. And it also looks pretty stealth oriented, which is really cool. That is one thing that I really appreciate, because I feel like the first one really only kind of dabbled in it, which was a shame because I feel like they really could have done some pretty cool stuff. And it looks like they're doing it with The Last of Us 2. I do think specifically the thing that sticks out to me, and maybe this is just the extra bit of polish that they were able to fit into the dev cycle, but it looks really good, like visually and like animation wise, and the characters are really realized. It feels like it really looks like a polished game. It looks probably like the most polished game that I've seen out of Sony first party. And that is probably going to be the main reason that I'm excited to play it, because I feel like this is going to be a game that I could play while people watch, because it looks so immersive in that way. I'm still excited about it. Like, I think the second the leaks happened and I saw like some of the stuff, which we won't get into obviously, but I was immediately more interested in it. Like when I read some of the leaks, I was like, oh, this is wild, you know? So I'm still looking forward to it, and I think this is pretty much maintained the level. It looks violent as hell too.
It really does, which is awesome. Like I think that violence, The Last of Us in 2013 was an interesting game, just like Spec Ops: The Line and a few other games that uses its violence as a way to tell a story. It's not a means to an end. It's part of the nature of what you're doing in the game. And The Last of Us was special in the sense that it made you feel death. When you were killing someone and hearing them gurgle, when you were hitting them in the head with a fucking 2x4, it's not like playing God of War where you're just, and there's nothing wrong with God of War. I think it's a fun game to play, but when you're just cutting through enemies and they're not human and they don't speak English, or if they do, this is like a really interesting game where every life seems to be somewhat equal and rare and precious in its own way, whether or not they're good or bad guys. It's just that society's over, life is crumbling. And so every time you kill someone and you're hearing that gurgle, or you're stabbing them in the neck, or you're watching a clicker devour them, it just feels more powerful. And so I think the game isn't just violent for violence's sake, which is cool. And that's different, because I think that violence is just a fallback mechanic in so many games, whether for right or for wrong, that to see a game like The Last of Us Part 2 really wrap its arms, I should say, around violence as an approach and violence as something that you really have to begrudgingly do, that you have to put yourself in these positions as Ellie and these other characters, I think is really neat. And that's what I'm really excited about. I wrote down actually violence versus emotion in my notes, because the game balances the two on this teeter-totter, or whatever you want to call them. What are those things called? Seesaws.
A teeter-totter.
That is a thing though, right? Isn't a teeter-totter like a thing, or that's not a thing? I guess I don't know what that means.
I don't know. I don't think I've ever heard that in my life.
Yeah, I probably just made that up. But on this seesaw of like emotion, and the old trailers really played this up too, but emotion into violence, into emotion, into violence, and it really, in my mind, and maybe I'm overthinking it, but I don't think I am, is really a reflection of the lives of these characters, even when they're in the safety of Jackson, Wyoming, in the settlement that has electricity and all the shit, which is something that a lot of other people covet in this decaying world. it just feels like it's a reflection of their day-to-day life of danger. We can't relate to it. It's something that and I don't want to spoil the original Last of Us because I know some people haven't played it yet, but it's something that you feel really acutely in the beginning of that game, in that surprise beginning of the game. And so just to catch people up a little bit, go ahead and watch it if you haven't. And by the way, if you've not played the original one, I don't know what you're waiting for or what you're thinking and what you're doing with your life. But the game takes place a few years after the original Last of Us. Ellie is 19 years old. I think Neil Druckmann, who talks and narrates the video, obviously the director of the game, the writer of the game, vice president of Naughty Dog, he says it's several years after The Last of Us. And he talks about their game taking place as the original did in multiple seasons and climates. Folks will remember, and this isn't a spoiler, that the original Last of Us was really broken down into chapters that were separated by seasons. So it would be interesting if they did the same thing. I like that approach. And they said that while the game begins and takes place in Wyoming, that a lot of it takes place actually in the Pacific Northwest, in Seattle in particular, in this decaying and destroyed Seattle. I thought this was interesting. How did that strike you? Because I haven't been reading too much about the game. I've been trying to avoid it, so I don't know if this was already known, but it seems a little redundant in the first party now with Days Gone. That was in Oregon, so that's not technically in Washington, but just having that Pacific Northwest, that alpine feeling, the pine trees, the wetness. What did you think of that setting and going to Seattle? And by the way, if you want to get even more technical, the infamous Second Son also takes place in Seattle, so that's pretty funny. But what do you think of that?
I think it's cool. I think it's a nice setting. I think it's a nice American setting that isn't so overused. Maybe in like first party with like you said, Days Gone and Infamous. But generally speaking, it's not really something that we've seen. Like, we've seen New York a million times, and I would argue still probably never seen New York done super well. But we've seen
Spider-Man probably did it the best, right? You would say, or the Division.
I would say the Division 1 actually did it the best.
Yeah.
Like, I think they got the scale right into the Division 1. But
right,
we've seen Manhattan, we've seen like California and these kinds of environments. Still not really like Arizona or like the deserty parts of the US, which I think, although I guess we kind of get that technically in like the Red Dead games, if you want to get real technical. But yeah, I think it's a nice setting. We really only seen it in, I feel like Far Cry 5 was like the last.
That's like Montana. That's more like that big sky country even.
Yeah. So it's, I think it's maybe getting to the point where it's becoming a little bit too common, but I feel like we're still in that kind of that golden zone where it's still kind of interesting and new and fresh. And I think it just looks really, really good.
It does. It looks beautiful. It's really lush and overgrown and really takes advantage of the biome, as it were, of that particular part of the country, that beautiful part of the country. I love Seattle. I think it's a really stunning city. And I always kind of wanted to live there a little bit, but there was no reason for me to do so. But I was always excited to visit. And it's for people that have not seen it, it's mountains and this beautiful metropolitan modern city kind of buttressed right up against the wilderness. It's almost like Anchorage, but I would say even more beautiful and more unexpected considering where it is.
Yeah.
And so in this area, they introduce us, and I know that some of this was already known, but there are basically two warring factions that are fighting over Seattle in the game 25 years after the fall of man, not the Resistance game. The Washington Liberation Front is, I guess, the group that's more militarized. They have the upper hand. Neil was explaining how they're well armed, they're well trained, they work in numbers, and their enemies are a religious sect called the Seraphites. And I am really, and I've always been since the very first trailer when it was clear that there was a religious connotation in this game. I love religion as another storytelling device, especially when it's dark. That's why I think some of the best horror, like Rosemary's Baby or Children of the Corn or whatever, is all centered around religion. But the Seraphites are the most interesting part of the game to me. And we met some of those people when they were clipping that girl's wings in one of the trailers. They show that girl again. And they're apparently the underdogs in this struggle in Seattle with the Washington Liberation Front. They use silent weapons. They hide in the brush. They're outnumbered. What did you think about this kind of setup for some sort of conflict that's happening in the background? We don't know what the nature of it is in regard to Ellie's story, but what did you think about the way they position this Washington Liberation Front and the Seraphites?
I think it's cool. I wonder I always like the idea of, as a player, interacting with enemies that are also at odds with each other. I like jumping into a conflict, and the thought of like, hey, these two factions are both your enemies and they're both against you, but they're also against each other, is like a really neat kind of combat tool to take advantage. I hope that there are many opportunities that you get to kind of pit these people against each other, or maybe like lure like you used to be able to do this with the people that you were fighting in The Last of Us 1 with the infected, which, by the way, is technically a third faction now.
Right, yeah, and they go into that a little bit.
Yeah, so the thought of being able to lure one to the other, and, you know, kind of use the numbers of the enemies that are against you to your advantage is really fun. I like that.
Yeah, it's got a Far Cry feel to it, in the sense, you know, when you would go and liberate an outpost, and there would be like a cage with a tiger in it, and you'd shoot the cage and then just let the tiger fuck everyone up. It sounds like you can do something pretty similar with the infected or these various sects. Now, one of the things I'm wondering, Chris, in the way that the Washington Liberation Front and the Seraphites are positioned against each other, is I wonder if this is going to be a Man in the High Castle like situation. And what I mean by that is the Man in the High Castle is about the Nazis and the Japanese winning World War II and taking over the United States. But in the story, they kind of position the Japanese as a more sympathetic, almost gray bad guy, as opposed to the overt evil of the Nazis. Like in Man in the High Castle, the Nazis are eradicating black people. They're killing all the Jews. They have concentration camps. The Japanese kind of let those people live amongst them. And so even though they're the invader and the bad guy, they're kind of like a more sympathetic group. It's more than binary.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if we're going to get something like that with these two groups, or if they're just both going to be this equal evil that's taking part in the place in the background. Because it seems like the Seraphites are really much more evil from what we've seen, but I don't know if they're positioning that as sort of a red herring.
Yeah.
Or whatever the case might be.
Yeah, you never know with these pre-release things.
So I'll be really interested to see that. And like you said, the infected are in there. Obviously, we still have the runners, the clickers, the stalkers. They showed the shamblers, which looked like, I thought the shamblers were in the original Last of Us. I thought you fought them in the gym in the game, and then in the sewers. But I guess they're not, or they're like a different class. But they do introduce some new classes, and they talk about, or they're going to talk about how there are some new classes. I'm a little confused how this works in the narrative. I'll be interested to see how they tackle it, because it's not like it was 2 years after the fall in The Last of Us, and so the infected had not gotten a chance to evolve into these things. It was 20 years after. And so you would assume that 20 and 25 years wouldn't make that much of a difference in terms of like finding these more evolved forms of infected, because I do like how like the clickers the clickers in the narrative, in the lore, are runners that have been so overcome by cordyceps that they can't see or hear anymore. It takes time for them to turn into that. So they're basically blind and deaf, or at least blind. And so I'll be interested to see how the narrative deals with like introducing like new kinds of infected. I'm almost not crazy. That's like one of the things I'm not crazy about, because it seems like, why wouldn't they have run into them in Utah or Colorado or Massachusetts or wherever else they were? You know?
Yeah. I mean, I could buy that the infection is so strange and kind of mysterious that I could buy that maybe you wouldn't necessarily run into every single type at any given moment. You know, like discovering a new type of zombie isn't something that, like, if I was in the situation, I'd be like, oh yeah, I guess there's another one. Like I wouldn't really think too much about it. It's like, oh, I guess I didn't see that before. It makes a little bit more sense than just having, like, I don't know, like in any other kind of sci-fi game where like a random new alien race shows up and it's like, what?
Sure.
Where have you been?
Yeah, that was the thing we dealt with a lot in Resistance, which was interesting.
Yeah.
So it really isn't that outrageous. I mean, it is a video game still, and that's where we kind of see, I think, Chris, in the 23.5-minute video, that it still remains really gamey. And I would actually suggest that it's even more gamey, it seems like, than the original Last of Us, which I think is something that might be attractive to some people that put this game off for being too movie-like the first time around or not interactive enough. There's deeper upgrade systems, including personal upgrades and reading hunting manuals and all these kinds of things. There's a deeper modification and weapon system. It seems like the crafting system is deeper, although still real time, which I think is necessary to the horror of the game.
Yeah.
You can go prone now.
Yeah.
And crawl through grass, which I think is cool.
You can crawl under cars. That was a pretty cool one.
Yeah, so what do you think about the gameplay itself? I think the gameplay looks really fun, although I must say, and I haven't read anyone's or listened to anyone's impressions on this, so I don't know if this is something people have gone into too much, but I'm sure you noticed the aiming. I guess there's aim assist in the game, which is fine. I'm certainly going to need it as I get worse and worse at games, but it seems like when Ellie was going for headshots, she was almost aiming above everyone every time she shot. I don't know if you noticed that, but it wasn't like when she was aiming with the bow and arrow, maybe it's the arc of the arrow, but it seemed like she was not aiming at their heads sometimes. That was something that stood out to me. I don't know if that's just being gamey, which is fine.
I don't know. I don't know if I noticed too much of that.
What did you think, though, of the game itself? Just like of it playing?
I like that they've given you more to do and given more abilities that are intrinsic to your character that aren't necessarily like immersion breaking. Like, obviously you're not double jumping or anything, right. Or like dashing or grappling hooking around the city. But you know, I like the addition of going prone. I like the addition of a jump button. I think that makes just a decent amount of sense, because there were some points in the original Last of Us where I was like, come on, dude, I could get over this, you know. Like, and that's like just kind of like a general kind of problem with a lot of third person games, where you see like, oh, there's a jettisoned car seat in this stairway. Guess it's inaccessible. And right. It's like, what are you step over it? What do you?
Yeah, that is obnoxious. For sure.
So it's I like that that there is verticality, but not to a degree that kind of breaks the feeling. It doesn't make you feel like so powerful that it defeats the purpose of what The Last of Us is trying to do. It just gives you enough leeway that you're like, yeah, as I'm a human being and I can do this.
I'm excited about it, man. I just think it looks so much more dynamic. Even the way that the AI characters control or seem to be controlled by the game itself, just seems so much more interesting than the way Ellie was controlled. Like, they're violent, they're getting in on it. It's not just her throwing bricks and doing little distractions or whatever. So it's interesting that they brought that back, because that was a major complaint that a lot of people had with the original game, was how immersion breaking she was when she was being controlled by the AI. And so I wonder if in some way that was them tackling a major problem. Like, instead of shying away from it, they're like, we can fix this, because they seem to showcase it quite a bit in the game, which is interesting.
Yeah. The animation looks great, and it looks super, super dynamic. It looks like they have an animation ready for every perceivable circumstance that the player would find themselves in. Or at least that's the sense that I got. I'm sure that's like obviously not literally true, but they do a pretty good job of showcasing that their character models interact with the environment in a very believable way. And I don't know, it looks good.
Yeah, it really does. The thing I wanted to ask you about was Bruce, not Bruce, he's not there anymore. Neil was talking about side narratives, and he talked about how Ellie will have access to a rope,
right? That
she can like descend things and climb things. First of all, does that count in any way? Does that at all scratch your hook shot itch?
Yeah, totally. Listen, man, I don't know what to tell you. I've been saying this for so many years at this point, but they're just so fun. Like, every time they're in something, they're cool, you know, because it feels good to be able to just climb shit. And it feels good to have like a thing that you can use that like isn't so unbelievable, you know. Like, I think that was honestly one of the big reasons why I loved the Arkham games so much. It's because like, oh, I can fly and I can grapple. What an unnecessary combination of things. So cool.
It is cool. Like, I do like that this adds a little bit of exploration to the game.
Yeah.
I assume side narratives means you're going to find some collectibles and some letters very similar to the ish letters in the original game. So I'm not getting too excited about there being side quests, nor do I feel like there needs to be any of that. So it seems like they showed a little bit of restraint, similar to how I think they always showed a lot of restraint in like Uncharted by not having in any of the games like an upgrade system and stuff like that. That would be too much for that franchise. I think that getting too much deeper than the main narrative and giving you too much to explore, like a hub world or something, would have made me fucking lose my mind. So
so
they didn't do that. And then they did introduce this, I think, in a previous video, but they showed it a little more in depth. What do you think of the guard dog thing with the smell and using your hearing? Or, you know, you could see through walls, whatever that, I forget what that skill is called from the original game.
Yeah.
What do you think about that whole functionality? It's pretty interesting. Although there's a scene late in the gameplay where she kills one of the dogs with a Molotov and you hear it whimpering, which was kind of difficult. But again, that's the emotion of the game. It feels like you're actually killing something.
Yeah,
which is kind of nice because it adds emotion. But what do you think of that whole thing with the dogs?
Yeah, I mean, I'm into it. I don't necessarily love dogs in video games. I kind of feel like they're a little bit, I don't know, they're never animated quite right, which is really, I guess that's because we've grown with dogs for so long as like a species that it when we see something that's like a little bit off, like there's like an uncanny valley more often with dogs than I feel like with anything else, any other animal, because any other animal is just like, oh, this is just a stupid poorly animated cat, I guess, in like Witcher or something. But like with a dog, it's like, ooh. But it looked fine. The smell stuff I feel like it could get frustrating because there's an element of like, well, how do you really stealth away from a dog that can just kind of smell you? But I don't know. I'm not too annoyed with it. I think it could be kind of fun. And I'm sure there's like some mechanic to it that is that you'll learn and you'll figure out how to counter it.
Yeah, it's by killing dogs. It's that Twitter account of, can you pet the dog in this game or whatever. I don't think you're going to be able to pet the dogs in this game.
Yeah. You can pet them with
unless
a knife
you want
through the skull, I guess.
Exactly. Right, exactly. You'll be able to pet, you can maybe skin them. You can skin the dogs in this game, perhaps.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's basically everything. They did introduce some new weapons and stuff like a suppressor for your pistol, which is cool. Proximity mines, which is interesting, although those technically existed in the first game in the form of the nail bombs. The one thing that I thought was weird, and I thought this was really weird, although I was happy to see it, was the inclusion of the Vita. What did you make of that? I thought that was super weird. Not that it's in the game, because I think that would have been really cool to just... First of all, I'm disappointed that they showed us that. And because I think that would have been a really fucking weird and funny thing to see. But that it seems like it's a distraction. It seems like that's what everyone was writing about yesterday, was someone's using the Vita, which I thought was weird. And by the way, was she playing Hotline Miami? Because that's what it sounded like. But I could be wrong on that take. But anyway, what did you think of that whole inclusion? That was weird. I thought that was kind of strange.
It seems a little bit... I like Easter eggs, and I like when games can get kind of silly. But I feel like The Last of Us is one of those games where it just kind of feels weird to see just an obvious kind of screeching Easter egg. That's sort of... it'd be one thing if it was something that you could find, like if you were like rummaging through a drawer and you found it, or if it was just like on a table, like in the background somewhere, but like it's kind of in focus, like in that shot. It's arguably like the thing that's closest to the camera when they show it. So you're just kind of caught wondering, like first of all, what are you doing playing this thing in the middle of an apocalypse? There's no way that battery is still okay.
That's what I was thinking too.
but also just like, I don't know. I didn't mind it too much, but at the same time, I did feel like it was a bit out of place for a game that's going for the tone that it's going for. But it's not that big of a... I don't know. It's not that big of a deal. I'm not going to think about it after I see it.
It's not. I wish that they just didn't expose that in the trailer, though, at the very least. I do think she was playing Hotline Miami, though, which was... Because I just know that because of the music, because I was just playing it on Vita a few weeks ago again. So I definitely recognize that music. And so that's another interesting component of it, is that's not a Sony game. So they had to get permission for that. So that was something that they had to think about and do. It would have been much easier for them to put like Uncharted Golden Abyss on there or something like that. It's very weird that they chose that game to put in there.
Also, one of PlayStation's biggest characters killed probably the last Vita player. So that's kind of I feel like that's a little it's a little weird messaging, but all right.
Yeah, maybe there's something more philosophical here.
She rams a blade through this woman's throat because she's playing a Vita. It's a bit messed up.
It is a little bit messed up, but I did like that. And I'm pretty sure, there is like some music in the game too, which is interesting in that section that they also had a license. So there's a few more hoops that they had to jump through to make this a reality, which I thought was kind of neat. But we have a few inquiries from the audience about this that I thought would allow us to explore a little more. First of all, Johnny Rosado wrote into us and said, Dear CNC, due to listening to your point of view on the topic, I've decided to buy The Last of Us 2 at launch. Thanks for sticking to your guns. I'm confused still. I appreciate that, Johnny, but I'm confused about how anyone could come down on the side of the people who ruined this game for other people. That's something that forevermore I will never understand how anyone can possibly justify that behavior. And so I think that it's interesting to me that the game is resonating with so many people because I think that that's an obvious thing, but I'm also interested in the fact that so many people are justifying that behavior still. I'm not saying Johnny's doing it. It seems like we've changed his mind on that, but I was a little disheartened by how many people, like just how many people feel that way about spoiling it and ruining it.
Yeah, it's a little bit weird. I don't understand it.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't get it either. So Michael Valdivia wrote into us and said, Yo, Colin and Chris, which game is more likely to be your PlayStation Game of the Year, The Last of Us Part 2 or Ghost of Tsushima? So we obviously haven't played either of these games yet, but we can only conjecture what we're going to like more. I think it's pretty obvious that The Last of Us Part 2 is going to be a better game, but I'm excited about both of them. What do you think, Chris? Which one do you think will speak to you more?
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that The Last of Us Part 2 is probably going to be the one that's a little bit more resonant. Whether or not it's the one that I play more of, that might be a subjective matter, because The Last of Us I played, I think, once, and I never really played again. I feel like Sucker Punch's games are a bit more like replayable in a certain way. They're a little bit more open, and they're a little bit more like you can jump into like a game of like Infamous. You know, you could be like, I'm kind of looking to kill some time before I have to take the bus to go to therapy or something. And you could jump on Infamous and just like blow people up and just sort of dash around the city, and it's pretty satisfying. The Last of Us is a little bit obviously more narrative based. It's for the same reason that I'm probably not going to play Red Dead again for like a pretty long time, I would imagine, if ever again, for similar reasons. But I would imagine that The Last of Us Part 2 is probably going to be significantly more impressive to me, just based on what I've seen animation wise. Gameplay wise, I will say I'm definitely kind of looking forward to Ghost a little bit more, just because I like the guiding wind, and like the setting is really unique, and I'm like really into that. But yeah, it would be shocking to me if Ghost ended up wiping the floor with The Last of Us.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything about what we have two comparable things to show now, right? We have these two state of plays that show the games off pretty extensively. I don't think there's anything about Ghost of Tsushima that looks better than The Last of Us Part 2, but that doesn't mean that I'm not excited to play both, because I am, but I do want to reiterate that I think it's a mistake to release them in this order because of that. Although I will say that you're right, Ghost of Tsushima is probably going to be a longer and more intensive game in some respect. I would imagine The Last of Us Part 2 will be 15 to 20 hours. I would expect Ghost of Tsushima to probably be more like 25 to 30. Those are just random guesses.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it all works out, but I'm certainly looking forward to it. The Last of Us Part 2 looks like frankly looks like a game of the generation caliber game to me. And I don't get that vibe from Ghost of Tsushima at all. So, right. But again, that's all subjective. I know some people are excited about one over the other. Don't want to be too negative about that or come off as too negative. But let's see here. We have a few other things that people wanted to ask us about. Will Selfridge wrote in and said, Hey boys, congrats on episode 100. Thanks, Will. Looking forward to the next 100. We'll see about that. I have a question about The Last of Us Part 2 State of Play, and the question is why? I'm sure there's some marketing wisdom behind it, but with only 2 weeks out and all the leaks and copyright controversies, I just don't see why Sony wants to show more of this game off. We've already seen a bunch of stuff from Naughty Dog, and most gamers are probably already sold on it. Why not show more of Ghost, or perhaps highlight something else on the PlayStation horizon? Love to see your thoughts. Cheers and love from the U. Thanks, Will. I appreciate it. So I like that they showed the game off like this. In fact, I think that it's pretty cool that they did this, Chris. I don't know if you agree, but it kind of is a middle finger to the people that leaked stuff to say, like, we still have a plan. There's still things we want to show. Most people actually haven't seen that stuff. They've avoided it. A lot of people aren't paying attention. There's probably plenty of people that are not even privy that any of that stuff happened. So I think it's necessary to show the game off like this. People might be sold, but I think that more people are sold on it now than ever. And I don't think you need to or want to show more of Ghosts. Maybe there's going to be another video, and obviously there'll be a launch trailer, but we saw what Ghost of Tsushima is about pretty extensively. It's important to note that we had seen so little of Ghost of Tsushima, relatively speaking, that video was really important for them to do. I would say everything except for some, I would say, I don't want to say everything. Half of what we saw in The Last of Us is state of play we've already seen. Sometimes we've already seen it many times. So there wasn't everything in there that was fresh to the eye. So I do like that they did it. Do you feel like it was a unnecessary step for them to take to do this?
No, I think it's a good idea. I think it gives them a little bit more control of the narrative. It gives them a wider reach, because these videos are definitely going to have a wider reach than spoilers do. They're going to be televised and put before ads and stuff, and they're going to be cut up in very good kind of vertical slices for marketing. It gives people a nice controlled environment to show the game that isn't kind of tainted by the leaks, and I think that's a smart idea. You kind of want to flood The Last of Us as a keyword on the internet with stuff that you allow. Sounds like there's a Far Cry biplane flying over my house right now. Yeah, I think it's smart.
Yeah, I do too. I don't mind it at all. You got to kind of proceed with your plan, and you don't want the leaks to be the marketing for the game, because that's not an effective way to market your game, obviously. So I think that they showed us what we needed to see. I wish that they didn't show some of it, but it's still a nice video, and it's hopefully a sign of things to come with State of Play, which they announced and then they kind of let languish for a little while. And I think it's an important brand for them. I think it's important that they do this. I think that they should do one for Iron Man. Yeah. And keep it going. And maybe they don't need to have 23 minutes of Iron Man footage, but they should definitely do something for that game and show it a little bit of love. So we'll see how it all develops. But yeah, I agree with you, Chris. I think it's a necessary part of the marketing machine. But Justin Kirkland wrote into us with another question in terms of marketing. He says, "Hey fellas, how do you think the marketing schedule and release date of The Last of Us Part 2 is affecting the marketing schedule for the PS5? Is Sony protecting the hype machine for the game by waiting to reveal the PS5?" This is a totally relevant question. I don't know. Do you think that PlayStation 5 is waiting for this game to come out before, or Sony waiting to release this game before they show PS5? Because if the rumors of the June 3rd-ish event for PS5 is true, then that's definitely not the case. I don't know that one really matters over the other. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I do think you kind of don't want to show a machine that kind of invalidates the machine that has your killer app coming to it before that killer app has come to it. I do think maybe that there is a reasonable decision, marketing-wise and business-wise, to maybe hold off on showing the machine until after The Last of Us comes out. But at the same time, The Last of Us is coming out so late that I don't know what choice they really have. There's no doubt in my mind that the delays of The Last of Us and its new release date have affected how Sony is planning to talk about the PlayStation 5. I am fully, and that also combined with just all the coronavirus stuff, I would imagine, I would have a hard time believing that none of this has impacted the marketing schedule for the machine, and I would have a hard time believing that were it not for all of these setbacks, including the Last of Us delay, I think we would have seen the machine probably already, or at least a little bit more about the machine by now. But I don't know if it's going to make it, I don't know if it's affecting it so much that they're going to be like, we have to wait for the game to come out before we talk about it, because then you're kind of like, okay, the game's out, now your machine is done. It's like, what? You're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't with this late in the game, you know, like, so you might as well just sort of get it over with.
Yeah, it's interesting because they're dealing with a little bit of a different problem than they were dealing with in 2013 with the PS4, just because PS5 will play PS4 games, so they might be in a more advantageous position, but you want to still sell hardware. They're releasing a PS4 Pro alongside this game, and they're having a bundle for Iron Man VR with PSVR too, so they're not quite giving up the ghost on these games yet, which I like. But I think that they're in a little bit more of an advantageous position this time around just because of the backwards compatibility of the upcoming console. Because people will remember that PS4 was revealed in February of 2013. The Last of Us came out in June. And we still got games like Beyond Two Souls in October, I think. And then I think Gran Turismo came out in December after the console came out. So it's a little bit of a different situation, but I do agree with you. And the rumors are that Sony had wanted to talk about PS5 already, so this wasn't supposed to all conflict. It's important to remember that these games got delayed. Coronavirus fucked everything up. And so I think they're just dealing with the best hand they could. I think that if anything, they're probably pleased that they didn't go before the coronavirus epidemic really started getting going around the world in like March, because then they would have had to do some budget looking, again, ISIS video looking thing like Microsoft did. So you don't want to do that. Zippy Majewski wrote into us. This is a thing that a lot of people are having a hard time with me in particular. So he says, what are your thoughts on having the biggest gaming podcast revolving around PlayStation, giving them free advertising? Yet you're treated like second-class citizens by Sony's PR department. Isn't there a way for you to get along, extend the olive branch, and bury the hatchet? It pains me to see Greg Miller from Kinda Funny already getting a review copy of The Last of Us Part 2 while you do the heavy lifting. All right, so first of all, I know this for a fact now, and I know that a lot of people don't have any insight into this because they've not released a game and not been in the media. A lot of game publishers will say, like, we only have a certain amount of copies to distribute. No, you don't. We got a fucking document of codes for Twin Breaker that is so long. It's like the Dead Sea Scrolls. Okay. So it's just an impossible amount of copies of games. So that dispelled for me forever that there's like a limited number of games to go around. It's just complete nonsense.
Yeah.
I say that because blaming like Greg for getting the game, I mean, that's great. I think it's awesome that Greg got the game. I have no problem with that at all. He should get the game. That doesn't preclude us from getting the game because and it's a first party game, so they can make as many codes as they want. But releasing Twin Breaker gave me insight. I was like, oh, how many codes are we going to get? Like 50? No, we got like 1,000. So like literally 1,000. I think we got 1,000 on PS4 and then 1,000 for Vita, by the way.
Yeah.
So literally just an infinite amount of codes. So where I threw most of them away because I'm like, I don't even know what to do with all these codes. So I don't think that it's a deficit for someone else to get a copy of the game. I think it's great that they're distributing the game. I have nothing against them for doing that. I have nothing against the people that are getting the game. It has nothing to do with us. But we are one of the biggest PlayStation podcasts, if not the biggest PlayStation podcast. And it is weird that Sony's PR treats us like this, but I don't even bother talking to them anymore. So because they just started ignoring us, and then if they wanted to reach out to us, first of all, I know they listen to the show. They listen to it every week. PR people listen and chronicle everything. That's their job. So they're listening to the show. They know that they haven't given us access to anything. They know that they ignored us. They know that I stopped reaching out to them. And so it's up to them to react to that. There is no olive branch or to extend or hatchet to bury because we didn't do anything. And I don't look at us as being an advertising branch for them. We do this show for PlayStation enthusiasts to tell them the truth about games, whether they're good or bad or whether we're indifferent or whatever the case might be. So Sony shouldn't work with us or not work with us because of the good things or the bad things we're saying. I think that's fucking nonsense. And although I do know PR does that, that's not the reason they're not working with us. The reason that they're not working with us, I think, is because Chris and I are somewhat erroneously controversial figures because we really don't say or do anything controversial, but we just have that je ne sais quoi about us in our show.
Yeah.
And so that's the reason I think Sony started ignoring us. And it wasn't always like this. We got games. I reviewed like Days Gone, and that might have something to do with it because I was really hard on Sony's PR with Days Gone because I think they are responsible for that game getting such a bad Metacritic score because they are the ones that distributed that game way too early when it wasn't patched. I wonder if they're doing the same thing with The Last of Us. Hopefully not. But I do think that it's up to them if they want to work with us or not. I don't beg for access. I don't beg for attention. We don't need it. We don't need their access. We don't need their attention. If they want to work with us, that's fine. But our show just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So it's not like our success is contingent on PR access. It isn't.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to go around and beg and play political games with people in order to get access. If they don't want to reach out to us and give us games, then don't. I don't know what else to say. I am very happy to buy this game. I'm very happy to buy any game. I've bought a shit ton of games this year. I bought Final Fantasy VII Remake. I bought Doom. I'm going to buy this. I'm going to buy Ghost of Tsushima. Whatever. I'm going to buy the games that we need, just like I bought Death Stranding, just like I bought Jedi Fallen Order, just like I bought whatever. And plus all the indie games and random shit that I buy in there. The only game we got this year that I got was Resident Evil 3 Remake, and I didn't ask for it. They just sent it to me. So I'm like, all right, I'll take it. And I'm glad I didn't buy it because I don't think it's worth $60. And I told you that. So you can always count on us to tell the truth and treat games fairly, no matter our level of access. I think we've shown that.
Yeah.
Ad nauseum at this point. And I don't think that people that get the access to the games are being dishonest in any way, because I used to get access to any game I wanted when I was at IGN and Kinda Funny, and it didn't affect my ability to tell the truth about them either. So I just wanted to throw that out there to say, like, just because Greg got the game doesn't mean we can't get the game, and he didn't do anything wrong, and I'm happy for him. And I don't want to like make an excuse, but I'm moving. My house closes on the 15th. The game comes out the 19th. This game would act as a massive distraction at a time in my life when I really do not need it. So if anything, they have kind of done me a little bit of a favor, but don't expect us to get any access to Sony moving forward. They don't want to work with us. I think it's a bad idea for them to not want to work with us. I think it makes them look petty and stupid, but I can't control that. All we can control is, are we telling you the truth? Are we doing our best work? Are we putting in the time and all those kinds of things? And we're going to do that. And we'll buy the game alongside with you. Chris and I both will on the 19th. And we'll have plenty to say about it. We'll talk about it on the show. We'll do an extensive spoiler cast and review discussion. None of that's going to change. And the only thing that would change is timing. And again, because of the nature of me moving and Chris is also moving, I don't know that I would even get through The Last of Us before the embargo, which, by the way, I think is a week before the game comes out. So they're clearly very confident in it.
Yeah.
Indeed. So, yeah, no other thoughts on that, though. Yeah, I know, because a lot of people are like, quote unquote, nobody's got access to this game. And this podcast, it's way smaller, too. And I'm like, I don't know, guys. It's not a big deal. It really isn't. Sony has it's their prerogative to give access to games or not. I'm not going to beg. And we don't need it. Like, we just don't need it. If they want to work with us, they know how to find me. All right. Chris, let's get into the rest of the news now that we're done talking about The Last of Us Part 2's very impressive state of play trailer.
All right.
Number 2. Both of June's free PlayStation Plus games have been revealed, and you can download them beginning June 1st, which may have already come and gone depending on when you're listening to this. Players can look forward to downloading the Activision-published Call of Duty World War II, as well as the EA-published Star Wars Battlefront 2. This news should please those that felt that May's offerings, City Skylines and Farming Simulator 19, were lackluster, as these are both AAA best-selling games. Call of Duty World War II launched in the fall of 2017 and was created by Activision-owned Sledgehammer Games, the studio that should have been on schedule to launch this year's Call of Duty before being unceremoniously stripped of the honor, according to persistent rumors. Star Wars Battlefront 2 also came out in the fall of 2017 and was developed primarily by EA-owned DICE with help from Motive Games. It's unclear as of yet when these games will be available to download. Oh, I'm sorry. That's from when it was a rumor. It is clear, June 1st. I forgot to edit that out. Remember that even if you don't intend on playing these games now, you may do so later. So take the time to add them to your download list if you're a PS Plus subscriber. What do you make of this catalog of games, Chris, especially in the light of, I thought people were being pretty hard on City Skylines and Farming Simulator, especially City Skylines, which is a very well-regarded game. But these are two AAA massive million sellers, $150 million budget games. So do you think that this is a nice little lineup for people to tantalize them, to wet their whistles with?
Yeah, I think so, especially because Battlefront 2 specifically has gone through such a rebirth. I know people who play it and say it's actually pretty solid now. It's another one of those redemption stories that's been consistently making that Miyamoto phrase less and less true. What is that phrase? What is it, like a
delayed game is, or a rush game is bad forever. A delayed game, I don't know, something like that.
Yeah. A rush game is bad forever, but a delayed game is eventually great. It's like, now it's like, nah, I guess not anymore. But
yeah, it still sucks though, because they still lost that momentum.
Oh yeah, totally. It's still ideal that you don't have to get to that point where you have to improve it, but at least they did it instead of abandoning it. Because unlike a lot of other games that do get the kind of, we'll fix it up in the Anthem. I think Battlefront actually did have something kind of cool about it. It was a gorgeous looking game. It was a really cool Star Wars like shooter that just deserved more content and deserved a better launch. So I'm glad that exists. Call of Duty kind of strikes me as like a weird one, because I feel like there had to have been Call of Duty in like the PS Plus games before, but like I feel like it's been a while since we've seen one.
Yeah, I can't remember, to be honest with you. I would say you're probably right. And World War II is supposed to be a really great game. I was a little surprised by it just because it's a Sledgehammer game, and it seems like Activision's kind of trying to Raven Software that studio at this point and put them to the back while they let Treyarch and Infinity Ward do their thing. So that was a little bit weird, but that doesn't matter to most people that play games. They don't care. They have no idea. So it's like I always said when I was a kid, like I thought Squaresoft was like the studio that made every Squaresoft game, but that wasn't true. I just didn't know anything, and that's the normal course of action for people that play games. They don't. Well, Call of Duty might be a little different, but I think a lot of people that play Call of Duty have no fucking idea what the difference is between Treyarch, Infinity Ward, and Sledgehammer, and I think that's fine. It doesn't really mean anything. So I think these are two nice offerings that I think placate the people that thought that last month's offerings were weak, but I still think people were a little hard
Yeah.
on last month's offerings, because I've not played it, but I just know that City Skylines is like considered a very good game. And I was a little disappointed with how some people were talking about it, but yeah, people to each his own. Farming Simulator, I'd like to go. I did download it. I'd like to get it on Twitch at some point and fuck around with it. Go harvest some wheat.
It's a great idea.
And whatnot. All right, so PS Plus games, again, Call of Duty World War II and Star Wars Battlefront 2, which has a really bad narrative single-player campaign, by the way.
Yeah.
That I hated. I just hated it.
Yeah, not good.
So, yeah, just really bad. But you can still enjoy the multiplayer at the very least. Number 3. Persistent rumors surrounding Silent Hill, the long-abandoned Konami horror franchise, have been swirling all year. Now we finally have some confirmation of new Silent Hill content, though the nature of it will most likely be a disappointment for those who are expecting more. In short, Silent Hill-inspired DLC will be made available in the asymmetric horror game Dead by Daylight, which came to PS4 back in 2017, and which was developed by Behavior Interactive, the studio best known for its licensed games and ports. The DLC will be available at some point in June and will include 3 main components: a new playable monster in the form of Silent Hill 2 antagonist Pyramid Head, a new playable character in the form of Silent Hill 3 protagonist Heather Mason, and a new level, the Midwich Elementary School, which is from the original Silent Hill. Depending on your interpretation of this news, this DLC could either all but confirm Konami's interest in creating a new Silent Hill game, or it could be the source of all the rumors to begin with. Konami most recently attempted to create a new Silent Hill revitalization with Hideo Kojima called Silent Hills, which was first revealed in 2014 and has since been abandoned. Can't read today. The series began on PS1 in 1999 and hasn't seen a new release since 2012's Silent Hill Downpour and Silent Hill Book of Memories. The latter was a Vita game. Justin Bryant wrote into us and said, "Hey, CNC, with the recent announcement of the Silent Hill collaboration with Dead by Daylight, do you think that we could potentially see a new game or a remake of Silent Hill? I personally think it'd be a smart idea to remake Silent Hill 1 or 2 to gauge public interest and then go from there. What do you guys think? Thanks, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their week." Thank you, Justin. That's very polite of you to say. Chris, what do you make of this news? I saw this and I was like, oh, what a fucking cock tease this is. Oh, that's brutal. What do you think?
It's pretty fucked. I think it's funny, though, because so many people are excited about it. It's like Silent Hill content, finally, after 200 years of dormancy. Right. Just like they seem to be just happy to be getting anything, which I guess is, kind of cool. It kind of gives them, I think it gives them some idea of how important that brand is to people. And the fact that something as menial and kind of, just sort of arbitrary is getting so much hype and so much attention is probably really good for them. I don't know if I would want to see a remake of the first Silent Hill. I think maybe it's probably a good idea. It's probably the most inexpensive way to really test the IP. Although I really don't know if you really need to test the IP, because people were stoked about Silent Hills. I feel like Silent Hill is one of those things that you could kind of make a new Silent Hill. You could even reboot the entire series, and it would probably still garner a decent amount of attention, because people just like horror games and people want good horror. And right now, I feel like Resident Evil is really the only series out there that is really full on horror. And even that, if we want to take Resident Evil 3 Remake as some kind of, forerunner or some kind of harbinger of things to come, it's probably not going to always stay that way. So I would just say, just make a new Silent Hill. I think people would want it. Yeah,
I think it's a shrewd observation on your part that the proof was in the pudding with PT, which is arguably the most famous demo ever in the history of video games by far. And so I think that they've already tested the waters. I will say, though, I've kind of vacillated on how I feel about this, because when I first saw the news, I was like, man, that sucks. And I don't know that this is good news for people that want more Silent Hill. But then I was starting to think, like, this just shows Konami's propensity to be willing to work with others on their IP, which they already kind of showed with Castlevania Requiem, which was funded by Sony and outsourced with Sony's money, which is why it's locked on PS4. So I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if this is a sign of things to come. The rumors that have been circulating were about 2 things: a Silent Hill reboot and then another Silent Hill game, like a new Silent Hill game. I don't think you should do both of them. I think you should do one. I don't think you want to split the difference. And I agree with you, in the AAA space, there's just not much to speak of. There are series below that in the A space, like Outlast and shit like that. But I don't think there's a hunger for AAA $60 $100 million budget horror games, and Capcom's the only one doing it. So I think I feel like maybe this suggests that there's good news around the corner, but if not, you can go get your Silent Hill fix with Behaviors at Dead by Daylight, which I have never played, but apparently is supposed to be pretty good. Have you ever played that game?
No, I remember a friend of mine invited me to play it. He gifted it to me on Steam. I downloaded it, got on, and then he was like, yeah, I'm going to bed. I was like, okay, cool. Thanks. That's so cool. So I never actually played it, but I do have it installed. Maybe I'll because I've heard nothing but good things about Dead by Daylight.
Yeah, for all the failures of asymmetric games in the last few years, that's one that's definitely found its audience and stuck around. But I think that they managed to do that mostly because there's not huge expectations around the game. It just seems like be this niche sort of thing. So anyway, people can go check that out. It doesn't have a date yet, but June at some point you can download the DLC. Let's talk about game sales. Number 4, the MPD Group, which tracks hardware and software sales in the United States, has released its findings for the month of April 2020. Perhaps not surprisingly, Final Fantasy VII Remake, available exclusively on PS4 for the time being, was the month's best-selling game, followed by Call of Duty Modern Warfare, the Switch-exclusive Animal Crossing New Horizons, NBA 2K20, and Grand Theft Auto 5, which just won't go away. Other notable games include Resident Evil 3 Remake at 6, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 Remastered at 7, MLB The Show 20 at 8, Predator Hunting Grounds at 15, and Persona 5 Royal at 18. Final Fantasy VII Remake experienced the best-selling launch month of a Final Fantasy game in the United States in the franchise's 3-decade history, outstripping Final Fantasy XV, which in 2016 launched on multiple platforms. If separated out by PS4 sales only, the following games make up the console's top 10: Final Fantasy VII Remake, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, NBA 2K20, Grand Theft Auto 5, MLB The Show 20, Resident Evil 3 Remake, Predator Hunting Grounds, Madden NFL 20, Persona 5 Royal, and Minecraft. Modern Warfare, Animal Crossing, and Final Fantasy VII Remake are the 3 best-selling games of 2020 so far. And over the last 12 cumulative months, Modern Warfare, NBA 2K20, Madden NFL 20, Borderlands 3, and Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order are the 5 best-selling games. On the back of the coronavirus-induced boredom and free time we all have, year-over-year game sales in the US are up 12%. Not too shabby for the last year of a console.
No.
Not too shabby at all.
That's pretty good.
It is worth noting that Nintendo does not share digital sales, so it's all but guaranteed that Animal Crossing was actually the best-selling game of the month, but we just don't know that for sure.
Yeah.
So, the Final Fantasy VII Remake, props to Square Enix for what is a lovely game, doing very well. Happy to see MLB The Show 20 doing well. I think people are really hungry for baseball right now, and since it looks like we might not get a baseball season at all,
yeah.
the best you're going to get is the game. And Predator Hunting Grounds is doing better than I thought at 15, although I don't know how that actually stacks up for sales.
Well, yeah, but it's doing better than Control did, though, which is pretty wild.
Definitely is. And shout out to stalwart Sacred Symbols fan Gio Corsi, who is a bigwig at Ilphonic, the studio that made the game.
Oh, cool.
Number 5, not surprisingly, CD Projekt's The Witcher series is a bona fide smash commercial hit. The official Twitter account for the franchise tweeted that the series has now surpassed 50 million units sold across all 3 core games. This news comes on the back of word that CD Projekt is now Europe's most valuable developer, a surprise considering all of the great teams working out of the continent. The Witcher game franchise is based on a series of Polish-language fantasy novels that first launched in 1992 and which have since been translated into global languages for a global audience. CD Projekt's first Witcher game came to PC in 2007 and was followed by The Witcher 2: Assassins of Kings in 2011, which was on PC and Xbox 360. Still no PlayStation release for that. The franchise hit critical and commercial hit status with 2015's The Witcher 3: Wild Hunt, and the team intends on continuing the series moving forward, even though it's come into some conflict with the book's author, Andrzej Sapkowski. CD Projekt's newest game, the eagerly anticipated RPG Cyberpunk 2077, launches on PS4 and elsewhere on September 17th. What do you think of that? 50 million games
that
sold
is
for The Witcher.
Genuinely kind of insane for a single-player RPG series that only has 3 games. Really, right? Like,
and which only one of them anyone really cares about.
Yeah.
I will say.
No
offense.
Definitely Witcher 3 is the one that I would imagine that Witcher 3 is the bulk of those sales. I that would be pretty obvious. But
yeah, more than half.
More than half. But I would put a lot of this also on the series. Like I imagine the series bolstered the popularity of that game quite a bit. My parents were watching The Witcher. I was like, what?
Yeah, The Witcher on Netflix, which I think got renewed for a second season. Yeah. Not surprising, I guess. I haven't watched it yet. I don't know that I'm really all that interested in watching it. The only thing I've seen is that there's this GQ, the magazine, does a YouTube series. Have you ever seen it where people like criticize or critique things that are in movies?
Yeah.
So it's like a gambler will critique like gambling scenes. And they had a sword fighter, like a sword expert, come in and critique sword fighting scenes. And he was talking about how The Witcher's is actually pretty good. So that was about the most I've ever seen of that show.
I like it. It's a pretty good show. I think the first episode is particularly impressive with the choreography. If you're going to watch it at all, I would suggest you at least watch the first episode because it's pretty wild.
What's that actor's name again? I can't think of it.
Henry Cavill.
Henry Cavill, right. His seminal role is still in The Tudors. I loved him in that role. And you see him sword fight a little bit in that, but that was before he was even Superman, I think. So that was when he was nobody. Very handsome man. Very handsome.
He does in like a startlingly good Geralt impression. It's honestly like really off-putting how close it is.
I'm really interested to see how they're going to continue the franchise on games. And they did solve that. Remember, we talked about it on Sacred Symbols a long time ago with Andrzej Sapkowski, the author of the books. There's this weird Polish law in deals where if you feel like you didn't get a good deal on something, even though you signed a contract, and he signed apparently a really bad contract for the IP rights, he was able to, I guess, renegotiate those, because I think he took a flat fee, which was a huge mistake, instead of a percentage of sales, which is, I think, what he has now. And there was like a weird quirk in Polish like contract law where he could renegotiate that. While in the United States, if he signed that $500,000 deal, whatever, he would have been forever shit out of luck. So I think it was nice that they did that for him instead of wrapping that up in court. All right, Chris, number 6. Iron Man VR, the second-party PSVR exclusive set for a launch on July 3rd, has officially gone gold, meaning that its core development is over and it can now be submitted for certification and publishing. Word came by way of the official Twitter account of the game's developer, Camouflage, which shared a heartwarming picture of all of their team members working from home during coronavirus. Iron Man VR is Sony's latest attempt at publishing something truly substantive on PSVR with a powerful Marvel license behind it, and it will be available digitally, physically, and in a PSVR hardware bundle. Michael Smoley wrote in and said, "Hey guys, I was wondering if you guys were looking forward to or planning on trying Iron Man VR when it comes out. I tried the demo the other day and it really surprised me how fun it was. Flying around feels great and the visuals are a lot sharper than most other PSVR games. I think people are sleeping on what could be PSVR's best game here. I have not tried the demo, but I've heard really good things about it. It actually has piqued my interest, but I really feel bad continuing to say, I'll try that on PSVR, and then I just haven't even played fucking PSVR in like 18 months. So I feel like I'll just save it, and then like one day I'll come on the show and be like, oh, I played Iron Man. Are you going to try it? Are you interested in this game at all? You're more of a Marvel fan marginally.
Yeah, I like VR a lot too. Like I do bust out the Vive every so often because Beat Saber is on it, and I still have to get through Half-Life Alyx, which is like a huge VR title that I just haven't even come close to finishing. But the main issue with PSVR right now is that I don't have a camera yet, and I just haven't bothered to go on Amazon and find one. I don't know why. It just hasn't been like this urge. I actually genuinely do want to play Iron Man VR though, just because I think Iron Man in particular Iron Man and Spider-Man are the two perfect characters that I think that could work with VR as far as like video games go, which is a shame because there's a terrible Spider-Man VR game on Steam and I think on PlayStation maybe. I'm actually not sure, but Iron Man seems like totally valid because like anytime you watch an Iron Man movie, he's always he puts on his helmet, he's got like a heads up display. It's already kind of a sort of VR anyway. So I think that they could really do a good job in selling that kind of feeling. And genuinely, as far as like superhero games go, I remember playing the Iron Man movie-based game back when I was like a chillin'. And I actually didn't think it was terrible. Like it definitely wasn't a good like a great game that I'll remember for years. But as far as like, there were a lot of games like that were trying to capitalize on flight. Like, I don't know if you ever played, I'm sure you've probably played Dark Void, right? Yeah,
I played Dark Void. Yeah, strange
Superman
game.
Returns. There were a lot of like really weird flight-based games, and that was definitely one of the better ones. So I'm into it. I just got to get this freaking camera first. But luckily, this game will be coming out at a time where I'm probably going to be settled into my new apartment, where I probably have a decent amount of space allocated for that stuff. I got to get that stupid head, that stupid fake disembodied head that you put that you put the PSVR on. Because it's tucked away in a box right now, and I never feel the need to open up the damn box, set it all up.
That's my problem too. I'm definitely going to get that all sorted out when I move into the new place, because I do feel like I'm giving short shrift to PSVR. There are two things about PlayStation that I think I need to be better about giving a chance to, and PSVR. I mean, I was a big advocate of PSVR early on, as my longtime audience knows, but in recent years, I've not really given it a lot of attention. The last game I played on it was Moss, actually, which was fucking awesome, but I think that was like in 2018. Yeah. And then I gotta give a better chance to PlayStation.
You'll have space now. You can have a VR room, and it won't be so tedious.
Yeah, I think I want to play it in the living room just because I want my neighbors to be able to look at me I want my neighbors to think I'm as weird as possible.
Just draw the shades open as like high as can be.
Yeah, just let them all watch. I'll be like naked.
Lights on at night.
Yeah, it'll be a show for everyone. It'll be great. Number 7, Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Remastered, which was revealed by publisher Square Enix months ago, now has an official release date. It will arrive on PlayStation 4 on August 27th. The original Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles was a GameCube exclusive that came to the console in 2003 in Japan and in 2004 in the West. Unlike most of the core Final Fantasy games, Crystal Chronicles is an action RPG dependent on multiplayer, though it can be played alone as well. The biggest new feature in the remaster, apart from better visuals, voiceovers, and some new content additions, is online multiplayer, which wasn't available on the GameCube version. Better yet, you can play with those on other consoles, should you desire it. Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Remastered will be available to purchase digitally only. This is a weird one. I had this game on GameCube. I don't remember anything about it. And it wasn't one of those... GameCube had a modem attachment that you could buy, but almost no game used it. And this was one of the games that probably could have, but didn't. I remember buying it in the summer of 2004, but I literally don't remember anything about it. I probably won't play it, but it looks cute if you're into these Final Fantasy spin-offs, which I'm really not for the most part.
It's definitely not necessarily in my ballpark.
Number 8, I feel like we talk about this every week. Chinese mega corporation Tencent's relentless expansion into the traditional gaming market has continued unimpeded, this time in the form of a 20% acquisition of Japanese developer and publisher Marvelous. Tencent will pay $65 million for the right, valuing the publicly traded company as a whole, the developer, at $325 million. Marvelous was only founded back in 2011 and already employs more than 500 people across multiple internal subsidiaries. Marvelous is perhaps best known for its Senran Kagura games. It's also one of the producers of the anime, as well as more recent Harvest Moon and Rune Factory games, the Fate Extella and Valhalla Knight series, which were on Vita, and the popular God Eater 3. It's likely that Tencent was most interested in Story of Seasons, however, another Harvest Moon spinoff. Marvelous is apparently most keenly interested in getting more games launched in the West, and so will use its money for that. So Tencent's conquest continues. I don't, it's a Japanese company, Marvelous, so it doesn't really bother me, but these guys need to be checked at some point. It's not good that they have their tentacles in so many different companies. It's really weird how relentless they are in this regard. Whether it's Epic or Activision Blizzard, they own all of Riot. I don't know. I'd like to go a few weeks without talking about Tencent.
Yeah, that would be nice.
The dystopian Chinese mega corporation.
It's creepy.
But I said it honestly. I mean, if you're dangling money in front of me, I'll sell to Tencent. I'll sell CLS to Tencent. So if you guys are interested, let me know. Number 9, back in December of last year, a $30 attachment for the DualShock 4 was revealed and subsequently launched early in 2020, the back button attachment. The functionality of the device was simple. Once plugged into the controller, you could map 2 of the controller's buttons to newly placed buttons along the controller's handles. However, demand for the attachment ended up dramatically outstripping supply since launch, leaving most interested gamers out of luck until now. PlayStation revealed on its official Twitter account that the back button attachment will be available at retailers once more and may even be ready for purchase by the time you hear this show. This doesn't necessarily mark the first time Sony has underestimated demand for one of its peripherals. Most notably, Sony drastically undershot production for the PS4's camera, launched alongside the console in November of 2013, struggling for well over a year to get caught up. It seems that they've moved much quicker this time around, even with the inevitable disruption dealt to production because of coronavirus. Are you interested in this thing at all? I was really shocked by how many people wanted this thing, and I get tweets all the time and messages on Twitter or on Patreon about how people can't find it. So this will be good news to them. But I personally have no desire to use this thing at all. I guess I'm not a competitive gamer, though.
Yeah, so. I mean, like, I have the Xbox One Elite controller, and that has like 4 paddles that you can like attach to the back to give you extra buttons. And even I don't use those. So like I can't say that this kind of cheaper alternative really mattered all that much to me, but it's nice to have a cheaper alternative for that kind of extra functionality, even if the design I feel is a bit inelegant and kind of chunky, and I feel like would actually kind of fuck with my competitive ability in a lot of ways. I think it's good. I think it's good that more people have access to that more higher end functionality. I'm just so used to playing competitive games the way I've been playing them, with like a claw grip, which is probably like not good for my hands, but I'm stuck this way. So
yeah, your weird carpal tunnel syndrome grip.
Yeah, I touch I use my index finger, the side of my index finger, to hit all the face buttons.
Yeah, that's Eldritch, is what that is.
It just works it feels so comfortable to me. I think I didn't even notice that I was holding it weird until like a friend told me in like 2005 that I held my controller strange, and it's like, well, what do you like when you play first person shooters? Doesn't it bother you that whenever you have to touch a face button, you can't aim anymore? Like, that always bothered me.
Yeah, it's a good point. I guess I'm just not sophisticated enough of a first person shooter player to have even trifled with that.
It always
but
bothered the hell out of me. I was like, well, if I could just bend my finger over the face buttons, then I'll be able to jump and look around at once, and it's gonna be nice. And it changed the way I think it's the reason why I got so into competitive FPS. It's because the second that I figured that out, I was like, oh, there's so much advantage here. And it just gives you a spark.
I have heard, I'm sorry to interrupt you, I have heard that the back button attachment for PS4 for DualShock 4 is actually annoying to some people that have it. It hinders their ability to hold the controller properly.
It looks bulky.
I do think that it does. I do think that the cool thing about it is that whatever it is, like OLED display or whatever, I think is really cool. It looks really sophisticated. It looks way cooler than anything on the DualSense, actually. I know that some people were reading into it being like, oh, maybe this is indicates that DualSense will have like this cool like readout, but it would have made the controller really expensive. This little circular thing the size of a watch is $30. So you can imagine how expensive the controller would have been. The DualSense is probably already going to be $100 anyway.
Yeah.
So because you can feel raindrops on it.
$80 minimum, I would bet.
Yeah, it's going to be expensive. I think people are going to be more disappointed by that than the increase in game prices that you're going to experience.
Ooh.
All right. Ooh, number 10. A new Dragon Quest game has been revealed, and while we don't know much about it, we do know it's coming to PlayStation 4. The title of the game is horrible, however. It's called Infinity Strash, Dragon Quest: The Adventures of Dai. And unlike the mainline Dragon Quest games, which are traditional JRPGs, Infinity Strash is an action RPG. It's unclear who's developing the game, but publisher Square Enix plans on bringing the game to PS4 in 2021, at least in Japan, though with virtually all spin-off Dragon Quest games having come to the West in recent years, like Dragon Quest Builders and Heroes, it's safe to assume we'll get it eventually. As for the Adventure of Dai name, it may be familiar to Dragon Quest fans. That name was the title of a 37-issue manga released only in Japan from 1989 through 1996, with a 46-episode anime running from 1991 into 1992, and 3 longer films released during that time as well. An all-new Adventures of Dai anime is planned for release in Japan beginning this fall, and this game will act as a tie-in. Dragon Quest, arguably the second most famous JRPG series in the history of the industry and the most popular in Japan, began on Famicom in 1986 and has spanned 11 mainline games and dozens of spin-offs. The series was pioneered by anime legend Akira Toriyama, best known for Dragon Ball Z.
This dude likes dragons.
He does, and he loves drawing everything the same exact way as well. But I do like he's iconic. Now, I was Googling around about this name, Infinity Strash. Okay, now
Infinity Strash.
Infinity Strash. Yeah, I can't even say it.
It's really not good.
It's horrible. It's a Square Enix fucking name for sure. But and I hate to say this, but English is a real thing, and R's and L's are the problem. Like, and again, I'm not trying to be offensive to anyone, but like PlayStation, right?
Yeah.
Is how Japanese say PlayStation. There is no native sound for L, I guess, in Japanese. I'm not a linguist, but just as an example. And so I was Googling around. I'm like, is it possible that it's Infinity Slash? But there is a T in there. And I was just looking around at a bunch of stories just to find what people were saying, and they were all calling it this. So either someone mistranslated this thing because it's a Japanese trailer with no English in it at all, or it's really called Infinity Strash.
It's really not a good. It's just hard to say English wise, like phonetically.
It's so bad. It's like Infinite Undiscovery, which is still one of my favorite names ever.
Yeah, I don't know. 3.358 over 2 days, birth by sleep, whatever the hell, just whatever.
Yeah, all the same publisher there. It's a huge shock.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you, if they keep with this name, everyone's going to call it Infinity Trash. I'm already going to call it Infinity Trash, and I don't know, and I'm probably going to love it. So, all right, number 11. If you're disappointed with publisher/developer Electronic Arts' monopoly over AAA NFL simulation style games, we have bad news. EA has re-upped its deal with America's most famous sports league. Word comes by way of an EA press release, which confirms the extension of their exclusivity to create simulation-style NFL games in their Madden franchise, an exclusive right they've had since 2005. What's unknown is the length of the extension, though sources say it could bring the agreement through 2025 or 2026. A huge win for both sides, as Madden NFL 20 has to date attracted 30% more players than Madden NFL 19, which is nuts. The deal is a little more nuanced than usual, though. As we reported a couple of months ago, publisher 2K, which hasn't published an NFL game since 2005, was granted the right to create non-simulation NFL games, which, according to this new deal, will be a right also extended to EA. The NFL and EA need to act quickly, however. Their current deal only runs through 2021, or they had to act quickly. And EA's Madden franchise is a veritable cash cow and an annual bestseller in the United States and other American football-loving countries. And we just talked about the MPD. EA's Madden franchise began back in 1988 and has been released each year since the early 90s. I know you have no opinion on this because you're not a fan of football or Madden, but I was really disappointed to see this. It was inevitable. It was actually rumored for a while. I was reading about it on some sports websites, but I really want to see what someone else could do with AAA simulation. And Madden is actually really great. I play Madden with my nephew sometimes, but I just want to see someone else do something with it. And 2K is really, with the 2K Sports brand, is really the only publisher that probably has the means to compete. So it's disappointing that while they get access to make their NFL Street style games or whatever, or management games or whatever they want to make, they won't be able to make a simulation, which is what people want the most. And Madden is just a fucking cash cow for EA. So a little disappointed to see this. So we'll have to deal with Madden exclusivity till at least 2025, if not beyond.
Yeah. I wonder, though, if there's really much you can do with a because a simulation, like, I feel like with general game design, you're going for a goal, but that goal is always creatively interpreted differently based on the team that's going for it. Like, if you're trying to make an open world, kind of Grand Theft Auto kind of game, you could come out of it with Saints Row, or you could come out of it with Grand Theft Auto, you could come out of it with Watch Dogs. There's a lot of different kind of creative interpretations that you can have with that. But with a simulator, you just kind of make real life. So it's like there's really only so much that even if you gave it to another studio, you'd probably get something that's basically the same, because why would that studio that comes afterwards not just kind of copy what the previous studio did if what they did was doing well and accurately worked as a simulation?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. And by the time this new deal lapses, Madden would have been exclusive for 20 years. So they definitely have a lot of know-how at Tiburon and the other support studios that work on it. And I think you're right. I don't know what the interpretation would be and like how you would get a better product, but I just feel like it's a little disappointing because EA's biggest game is FIFA, but they have competition. It's marginal, I guess, but with Pro Evolution, they have a little bit of competition in that space. So I don't know. I just want to see more out of this. And it seems like all the sports games with MLB The Show and with NBA 2K and Madden and everything's kind of getting siloed into these monocultural verticals where there's just no meaningful competition. And what you end up getting in the baseball sphere, for instance, are just like arcade style baseball games like Backyard Baseball and RBI Baseball. And you don't get something like The Show. So I don't know. We'll see. I don't really personally give a shit at the end of the day compared to a lot of other stuff, but I just wanted to see someone else get in there and see what happens. But it's not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah.
Number 12. If you're a Kingdom Hearts fan, you'll be pleased to know that Disney's and Square Enix's bizarre action RPG collaboration is apparently getting an animated Disney Plus series. Word comes by way of a writer for website The Cinema Spot who tweeted out the news, noting that while Disney was planning on making it internally, it has since decided to have Square Enix itself lead the charge by making a pilot using Unreal Engine, which sounds like balls. Casting is reportedly underway for various voice roles. Kingdom Hearts began back in early 2002 on PlayStation 2, and its most recent release, the long-awaited Kingdom Hearts 3, came to PS4 and elsewhere in early 2019. While Kingdom Hearts has had a veritable hodgepodge of supporting media and other licensed items, it has never before been given an animated spin-off. Not a huge surprise considering Disney's guarded nature with its IP. Apparently, though, that's all about to change. I actually had to look into that because I was a little surprised that there was never an anime, but there wasn't. James Reich wrote in and said, "Hey, CNC, just learned that Kingdom Hearts is rumored to get an animated show on Disney+. I'm sure the thought of watching it will give you an ulcer, so I won't even ask. What other games would you want to see be given the animated show treatment? Would you want it to re-explore a main storyline from a game or develop the world or a side character? I'd like to see a series on a young Sully from Uncharted." It's interesting. This obviously makes me want to cry because I can't stand this.
I really thought, how silly of me to think that I was free.
I know.
I thought I was so naive. What an idiot! What an idiot I was. I thought I was I thought I was free from this. But
I feel bad because people really love the series. We're only busting balls. We know people love it.
We're joking around.
Yeah, but what do you think? What do you think of this? And what would you like to see from an animated spin-off or whatever?
I mean, it's impressive that they managed to kind of get Disney to let their guard down to do something like this. That's kind of wild. I feel like that's harder to do than it sounds. So I guess props to them. And I guess they need a series to really flesh out all the confusing shit in that universe. Because and I'm not saying that as somebody who just hates the game. Even my friends who love it, they'll be the first people to say yeah, I don't know what the hell's going on. So that's cool. That's fine. I'm happy for them vaguely. But I think as far as animated show treat, I'm gonna say shows in general, because I actually do think that as far as transmedia, where it goes from video games to other mediums, I feel like television is the best one, and I think it's the one that makes the most sense because I feel like they're far more similar to games structure-wise and even just lengthwise than a movie is. Because I feel like you could have a game like Red Dead Redemption that feels like a series. Like when I was finished with Red Dead Redemption 2, I felt like I had watched an entire 5 seasons of an amazing show. Whereas you couldn't really tell Red Dead Redemption 2 in a movie. Or you could, but it wouldn't have the same, even close to the same level of weight or character building or nuance or really anything. I feel like it would feel pretty rushed. So I feel like any game that I've ever even remotely enjoyed would be, I would love to see a Dead Space horror anthology. That would be cool. Or
that's neat.
Or a Mass Effect anthology, like Tales from the Citadel or something. I feel there's a lot of universes that are really rife for exploration narratively because they have such likable characters and such well thought out rules and universes and politics. And I think those two are the ones that came to mind immediately, like a horror anthology from Dead Space and just a general kind of series in Mass Effect, although I'd imagine Mass Effect would be hilariously expensive. But, I don't know. I feel like a lot of games could benefit from... I even think Ratchet & Clank would have been a far better show than a one-off random movie.
Yeah, it's a shame, too, because Sly Cooper was actually supposed to get a TV show, and then we just haven't heard anything of it in years. So, or it seems like years. Maybe it's not been that long. But yeah, for me, I talk ad nauseum about Castlevania and Mega Man. I know it gets old, but they did such a nice job with Netflix with the Castlevania series that now Mega Man should be revisited. And I actually like the 90s Mega Man. What is that Ruby, that anime studio, that famous Ruby? You know what I'm talking about? Ruby something. I can't think of it, but they did that Mega Man series in the 90s, and I actually really liked it. It's not great, but I did like it. But then there's that new Mega Man Cartoon Network series, I think it was on. It's fucking horrible. My brother and I were talking about it, where I'm like, if you told someone to make a Mega Man cartoon and told them to make it as bad and not Mega Man as humanly possible, what you end up getting is that cartoon series.
Was that real?
It's totally real. It's a Ruby Spears, by the way, is the group I'm talking about, the animation house I'm talking about. No, there's a new one, like a new Cartoon Network Mega Man series that's like new. I don't know if it got canceled yet or whatever, but it's horrible. Horrible. And I just feel like, why is this so hard?
Mega Man Fully Charged? Is that
Yeah,
it?
I think that's what, yeah, that's it. It's horrible.
What the fuck? I've never heard of this.
Oh, it's really bad. Yeah, so actually I forgot it existed for a while, and then someone the other day tweeted at me an Amazon link to some Mega Man toys, and I was like, oh, cool, I like to buy Mega Man toys and for my shelf or whatever, and it was toys from that, and I'm like, no thanks, just X'd out of the link. So I just feel like God, Capcom should just hire me because I would totally be able to nail that. I would just nail it.
Oh my God, ew.
Yeah.
Ew, this looks awful.
Yeah, it's just, I don't even know how it's Mega Man. I don't even understand like how they ended up getting this out of Mega. I'm literally saying, like, you could have said like, you could have said like, I'm going to just vaguely tell you what Mega Man is. I'm never going to show you any art or any source material at all. And then I want to see what you come up with. That's what you get.
Yeah, he genuinely looks, he looks so sickly. This Mega Man.
It's very weird. So
yeah, I don't want to talk about this anymore.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's move on. Number 13.
It's really ruined my day.
How about a quick PSA? PS4's newest firmware update 7.51 is now available, and it's a rare update that isn't required to download to connect to the PlayStation Network, so you may not even notice it's there. Not surprisingly, this optional update merely adds vague stability to the console and can be downloaded via your PS4 settings menu's update command. So this is becoming exceedingly rare to not have to download a PSN update, but 7.51 is not mandatory. So if you do want to have a more stable, vaguely stable console, you can go check that out.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I actually tested it. I went on Netflix without it, and I was like, oh, I'm really surprised that I can connect without this thing, but I did nonetheless. So yeah, go check that out if you want. Number 14 is a wrap-up, Chris. Website Gamatsu reports that farming sim Harvest Moon One World is coming to PS4 this fall. That action game Skeletal Avenger is coming to both PS4 and PS5 in late 2020, likely as a launch window game. Then an Amazon leak indicates that visual novel ReZero, The Prophecy of the Throne is coming to Western PS4s later in 2020. That fighting game compilation Samurai Showdown Neo Geo Collection is coming to PS4 on July 28th. That strategy game Warhammer 40k Mechanicus is coming to PS4 this July. The narrative-driven game Beyond Blue is coming to PS4 on June 11th. That once Nintendo and PC exclusive games Blaster Master Zero and Blaster Master Zero 2 are coming to PS4 and a compilation on June 29th. Can't wait for that. That arcade soccer game Street Power Soccer is coming to PS4 this summer. That Doom-inspired FPS Project Warlock is coming to PS4 on June 11th. And that racing game Kandagawa Jet Girls is coming to PS4 this summer. Gamatsu also reports that action-adventure game No Straight Roads has been delayed, and while originally slated for June 30th, will now launch on PS4 later this summer. And that horror game Made of Skur has also been delayed on PS4, being pushed from June to July. Website Push Square reports that racing game Fast and Furious Crossroads is coming to PS4 on August 7th. That difficult platformer Jump King is coming to PS4 on June 9th. That anime-inspired soccer game Captain Tsubasa Rise of the New Champions is coming to PS4 on August 28th. And that adventure game Paradise Lost is coming to PS5 at an unknown point in the future. Website GameSpot reports that a new Sherlock Holmes game, simply titled Chapter 1, is coming to PS4 and PS5 in 2021. And finally, Activision Blizzard's annual gathering BlizzCon has been officially canceled for the year, according to a blog post on the convention's official website. Sorry, nerds. All right, Chris, let's talk about the new games that are coming out in the drop.
Mm-hmm.
As tradition dictates, you will go first.
Alrighty. I've had this episode of this Mega Man show in the background. It's so
Why are you ruining your life?
Dude, it looks worse than Jimmy Neutron somehow.
It's really bad. I'm telling you, it's really. I'm not just saying that as a Mega Man fan. It's just objectively not good.
Oh my god! All right, what's coming? Atomic Crops comes to PS4. Modern City Life got you down. Well, you've just inherited your late uncle's farm. Well, I'd imagine I'd be pretty down about that. Like my uncle's dead. Time to pack your bags and start fresh in the peaceful countryside. What could possibly go wrong? A nuclear apocalypse, that's what.
Oh dear.
Now you're in a hellscape wasteland. Defending the last surviving source of sustenance, your crops, and every mutant wants a piece. It kind of sounds like Plants vs. Zombies, vaguely. But
yeah, like PvZ meets Stardew Valley.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Sounds kind of interesting. I love the word hellscape a lot. So I'm happy to see it.
It's a great word, no doubt. Bug Fables comes to PS4. Follow V, Kabu, and Leaf, or it's actually Leif, I guess, as they uncover the secrets of the land of Bagaria. Explore and combine your team's abilities to solve puzzles, defeat powerful enemies, and find ancient treasures.
Castle Pals comes to PS4. One night, Kylie and Owen stumbled upon creepy Castle Pukapik and decide to uncover its secrets. Nothing could possibly go wrong, could it? Play as 2 different characters. Punch your way through enemies with Kylie and fly above your enemies while avoiding traps as Owen. Owen sounds like a coward.
I know. Fuck you, Owen. Genetic Disaster comes to PS4. It's an awesome name. Absurd guns, crazy characters, instant fun, and accidental friendly fire in this co-op action game. Upgrade your hero to build your own gameplay style and combine different ones to create the perfect team if you play with friends. Don't feel like cooperating? A special PvP arena is also available. The game's motto, cooperate, but not too much. It's a great name.
Yeah, it is. I think I think Genetic Disaster was what they put instead of my name in my yearbook. Hotel R&R comes to PS4. Hotel R&R is the Gonzo VR rocket simulator that encourages bad behavior. Sell your soul to the devil, smash up hotels, and become infamous. Infamous as a capital. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah.
Pressure from hotel staff and your own limp wrists are against you. But with over 36 weapons and a world tour ahead of you, it's time to get creative.
All right, fair enough. Maybe the infamous capitalization is intentional and it's a secret sucker punch game.
Yeah, maybe.
Let's Sing 2020 comes to PS4. It all begins with the first tone. Sing as a solo superstar or perform with your crew and friends to rock every party. Let's Sing 2020 offers a great variety and has hits for everyone.
Now, this is another good yearbook placeholder. Little Misfortune comes to PS4. Little Misfortune is an interactive story focused on exploration and characters, both sweet and dark, where your choices have consequences. Led by her new friend, Mr. Voice, they venture into the woods where mysteries are unraveled and a little bit of bad luck unfolds.
All right, just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Not too much.
Many Faces comes to PS4. Make the Many Face King pay for waking you from your beauty sleep. Many Faces is a multi-directional shooter inspired by arcade classics, combining single-screen action with randomized stages that will constantly keep you on your toes. I don't like randomized stages. Doesn't do it for me at all.
Yeah.
But to each his own.
Minecraft Dungeons. This is a Microsoft Studios game. I think Xbox Studios game, technically.
It is. It is.
So, look at that. Comes to PS4. Fight your way through an all-new action-adventure game inspired by classic dungeon crawlers and set in the Minecraft universe. The Hero Edition includes a hero cape, 2-player skins, and a chicken pet. It also includes 2 DLC packs when they become available.
All right. Fair enough. I heard that it's fine.
Yeah.
Nothing more than that. Pong Quest comes to PS4. Pong Quest is a new take on the seminal arcade smash. Take control of a brave young paddle and traverse treacherous lands, each loosely based on various classic hits. By the way, we already read this, so this must have been delayed.
Yeah, totally.
In this uniquely Pong-themed dungeon-crawling RPG, dress up your paddle and equip special balls with unique abilities. The word balls is always so funny to me. With unique abilities to battle aggressive foes in quest or online opponents.
We're children.
I know, definitely.
Rune Lord comes to PS4. A portal has opened and dark magic is pouring through. Only you can close the gateway and defeat the evil ice golem. Or golem? I forget. There's like different ways, because Gollum is the Lord of the Rings guy.
Yeah, I say golem, but I don't know. I think it is Gollum, actually.
Yeah,
I think, yeah.
But you'll need to hurry. Time is short. So that's Rune Lord, PS4.
Rune Lord. Shantae and the Seven Sirens comes to PS4. Shantae is back in an all-new tropical adventure. In her 5th outing, the half-genie hero gains new fusion magic abilities to explore a vast sunken city, makes new half-genie friends, and battles the 7 sirens in her biggest, most thrilling quest yet. I love Shantae. Good series by Way Forward. Really, really pretty games. I'm not going to get to that anytime soon, but I got to add it to the list. They did release the last one on Vita, which was an awesome place to play it, but this one isn't on Vita.
No, well, no, that's cool. Yeah, my friend Ray's been talking about this. Okay, what is this? Those Who Remain comes to PS4. As the lights go out, the embers of darkness are stoked in the sleepy town of Dormant. Confront Confront uncomfortable horrors. Keep your sanity in check and survive the night in this story-driven first-person psychological thriller.
Didn't need to hyphenate all of those, but
yeah.
Good. I wanted you to get this one, but I'll get it. Utawaramano, Prelude to the Fallen, comes to PS4 and Vita. Discover the first chapter of a tale years in the making. Hakulolo, a man with no memories. Why does no one have a memory in these games? Must find his place in a strange new world and embrace the destiny that awaits him. Everyone hits their head in these fucking...
Yeah.
In some of the, well, not all of them, but in a lot of Japanese games. I think that we need to move beyond. Actually, you know what? I'm going to write a story like that.
Yeah. He just can't remember English. He has to relearn like literally every single motor skill. Why is it that you just forget? It's amnesia's weird because you just forget things that are convenient for you to forget for story reasons, but you never like forget like how to eat or like anything.
How to hold your bowels.
Yeah.
You're not like a vegetable.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, I'm no scientist. Yeah.
The final game, Wizard's Wand of Episcosity, comes to PS4. When the Wizard of Darkness awakened, it was up to one man to defeat him. When that man was accidentally killed by one idiot, Tobuscus. What? The responsibility of becoming an awesome wizard fell onto him by default. Tobuscus? The YouTuber?
Is there a YouTuber named Tobuscus? I didn't know that.
Back in the day, like that's such a specific name.
Maybe it's about him. I don't know.
I feel like it might be. Oh my God. Wait, hold on. I have to look this up.
Yeah, go ahead and look. I'll just say that there doesn't seem to be much of anything super interesting. Atomic Crops sounds cool, but it's not supposed to be great from the reviews I saw. Minecraft Dungeons, I think, has a pretty mediocre Metacritic score. Shantae, I guess, is probably the game that is most interesting out of all of these. And if you're a huge nerd, Yuta Waramano, of course. So is it about him?
So I can't. I Google searched the name and literally nothing comes up.
So for Wizard's Wand of Episcosity?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Just straight up nothing. So that's interesting.
Yeah, so maybe it just doesn't exist. Maybe it's a fake game.
Yeah.
Hey, it's me, Colin. I'm recording this after we've done this entire lengthy episode of the show because, predictably, Sony has officially announced the event that we are talking about in a more hypothetical sense right after you hear this. So on a blog post by Jim Ryan, the president and CEO of Sony Interactive Entertainment, they say you're invited a look at the future of gaming on PlayStation 5. Here's what he says. With each generation from the first PlayStation to PlayStation 4, we aim higher and we push the boundaries further to try and deliver better experiences for our community. This has been the mission of PlayStation's brand for more than 25 years, a mission I have been a part of since nearly the beginning. There are a few things as exciting as the launch of a new console. While this road to launch has been a bit different, we are as thrilled as ever to bring you with us on this journey to redefine the future of video games. We've shared technical specifications and shown you the new DualSense wireless controller, but what is a launch without games? That's why I'm excited to share that we will soon give you a first look at the games we'll be playing after PlayStation 5 launches this holiday. The games coming to PS5 represent the best in the industry from innovative studios that span the globe. Studios both larger and smaller, those newer and those more established, all have been hard at work developing games that will showcase the potential of the hardware. This digital showcase will run for a bit more than an hour, and for the first time, we will be together virtually experiencing this excitement together, A lack of physical events has given us an amazing opportunity to think differently and bring you on this journey with us, and hopefully closer than ever before. This is part of our series on PS5 updates, and rest assured, after next week's showcase, we will still have much more to share with you. Please join us on Twitch or YouTube on June 4th at 1 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. BST. What is BST? Britain? And 10 p.m. CEST to see what's in store for the next generation of games. I hope we can make you proud. So here's the deal. We talk about this hypothetically happening. We will cover everything that's announced on episode 101, which will be recorded later that day. So the timing is perfect. I knew I was right, moving the show from recording on Monday to recording on Thursday. And we will, of course, do Sacred Symbols Plus as we discuss here. We're going to record it and publish it on Sunday, the 31st of May, and we're going to make it available to all patrons. So $1 patrons, we're going to make it available immediately. Usually there's a 3-day grace period. We want everyone to be able to listen, everyone to be able to participate. So keep an eye out if it's not already up for the Sacred Symbols Plus thread that will solicit your questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas. We will do a predictions episode. We want you to be included. So now here's what we talked about before we knew this information and then the rest of the show. So enjoy it, and thanks again. All right, Chris, we're back. We're actually recording this separately. We had some internet issues, so that's why the show went up just a little late for patrons. But what we're going to do today, as we promised, is instead of doing our normal tradition does dictate that we do 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, or ideas from the audience from patreon.com/ColinsLastStand. Now, we typically get way more than we can use, and we try to put those into the mailbag episodes of Sacred Symbols Plus. But instead, we're going to go for 100 minutes during the Q&A. 100 minutes in celebration of episode 100. I have probably way more than enough inquiries for us to use during that time. We could take as little time or as much time as we want with them.
Yeah.
And if for some reason we run out of time, then we can just, sing a hymn or...
Yeah, like a nice 100 hymn.
Right. All right, so I have my iPhone. I'm hitting start on the stopwatch now. The time is going.
Let's go.
Let's begin with Trent Miller, Chris. He says, "Hi, insert clever names later. What do you guys think about demos for games? I remember specifically for this game called Downhill Domination for the PS2. I got a free demo disc and I absolutely loved it and played the demo countless times. I proceeded to buy the game and it did not live up to my expectations and I quickly stopped playing. Has this ever happened to either of you two where the demo is better than the actual game? Thanks, guys, and happy 100. I don't know that we have to talk about the demo living up to the game. We can talk about that, but I'm kind of more curious what your feeling is, Chris, on demos historically, but also what I feel like is a dearth of demos today. I feel like every game should have a demo.
Yeah.
And I know that that's a problem because it should really just be allowing a person to play a game for a limited amount of time like they do on Steam, and then you can get a refund. I think that's probably
like a trial period or something.
Right, exactly. So what do you think about this? And what is your history with demos? How do you feel about them? Has any of them ended up being better than the game that you ended up being enticed to buy?
I feel like I have a really long history with demos. I really liked demos when I was a kid, like, because it was when you're a kid and you don't have money, like demos were like the only way that you were ever going to play a new game, unless you had like friends who had money who had those games. But like I would remember getting like PlayStation magazines and Xbox official magazines and like getting a demo disc inside and like being able to try out all this stuff. That's how I tried. That's how I played Lost Planet, I think, was on either on a demo disc or it was one of the first demos that I downloaded. And in turn, it was technically the first experience that I had with online multiplayer, and it was from a demo. So I think they're really valuable. I think people can find a lot of cool stuff with relatively low risk due to just how free they are and how abundant they used to be. Demo discs and magazines and stuff. I still have this weird PS1 demo disc that I got in like a Pizza Hut box. I don't know what the hell promotion that was. But I wish we had more demos. I understand the nature of it is a little bit weird because you have to build a demo kind of almost from scratch. It is like a vertical kind of slice of the game, but that still has like development time to go into it. I think a smarter idea would be to have like an hour or two of like a free trial period with a game. In these days, I feel like that's a more modern solution, but I do think we should have them. There are definitely situations though where I feel like demos have hindered the game. Like in my opinion, there was a game that came out in 2009. It was a reboot of Bionic Commando. It was a third-person shooter with like kind of like a tacked-on multiplayer mode. And there was a multiplayer demo for that game that was actually really good, but because it was so good, it was like there was no real need to buy the game because you could just play the multiplayer for free. It was one map, but it was fun enough on that one map that I never felt compelled to really buy the full thing, and none of my friends who played that demo a lot felt compelled to buy it either. So you got to be a little bit careful and a little bit judicious about what you give for free and what you charge for premium.
Definitely. I think that there were some complaints, at least early on when Steam started to do that trial period of people kind of, especially with shorter games, like if you play Gone Home or something like that, or 3/4 Home, whatever, or One Night Stand, like you can kind of beat the game within that trial period. So I personally think an hour or two is actually too long. I think that like maybe just letting a person mess around for a half an hour with the game just to get a feel for it, even forcing them in some way to download the entire package onto their console, I think would be interesting, because then it's like you already have it.
Yeah.
And then so I loved the transition to disc when I was a kid from cartridge because it allowed for demos to be distributed cheaply, whether it was PlayStation Underground or, like you said, these discs that came with the official magazines, whatever. And obviously the discs that even came with the consoles, because we never got anything like that in the cartridge era. We didn't get, when we bought an SNES or an N64, like a cartridge with demos on it because it was too expensive to do that. Cartridges were really expensive to manufacture. Discs were cheaper to manufacture. That's what brought game prices down so substantially. So by the time we got to the PS2 era or so, I actually had enough money because I was working, I was a landscaper and a freelancer. All I did was spend my money on pot, alcohol, and video games. And so I was able to buy, just on a whim, almost any game I wanted because I had no real responsibility. Now, I wish I did have more responsibility at that time in thinking about the loans that I was taking out to live that I had to pay back later. But nonetheless, so I had an extensive library of games, many of which I never even opened, and half of which were probably really bad games. Like I have a huge GameCube collection, for instance, of physical GameCube games. So they didn't really have a huge effect on me. But I think the disc that had the biggest effect on me, or that sticks with me the most, is the original Xbox Live disc on Xbox. Because people might not recall, I'm sure you do, that to buy digital games on Xbox Live, you actually had to use a disc. Mm-hmm. And the games were on there originally. There was this original Xbox Live disc of the original downloadable games on the original Xbox, which was cool. So, but in this era, I feel, Chris, I don't, maybe I'm making this up, but I felt like at some point with both the PS4 and the Vita in the pre-release ecosystem, when they were talking about them, I thought that they were promising that every game would get a demo. And maybe I'm making that up, but what I can say is that virtually no games get a demo. And that's why it's always notable when there's a Final Fantasy VII or an Iron Man VR that actually lets you play it because, like you said, it might not be the best marketing tool, but I think it would cut down on a lot of bullshit on the system, on the ecosystem too. If you're going to play, or if you're going to put like one of these horrible, shitty 3.0 Metacritic PSN games out and people are actually going to be able to play them before they download them, you're not going to get any sales at all. Yeah. And then you won't release more games. So I think it's actually good for the quality.
I totally agree. I do think maybe I think the trial period thing is really a good idea. I do think maybe it can be like an opt-in or like an opt-out, or maybe it's based on what the game, because you can beat Gone Home in 5 minutes. Like, you know, like
90 seconds, I think actually there's a trophy to beat it in 90 seconds.
Yeah. So that one might be difficult, but I do think at the very least for a $60 game, there should be at least an hour trial period for at least for $60 games. $40 games, maybe not. Maybe like $20 games, maybe not. $10 games, maybe not. Maybe it's not super necessary because it's not that much of an investment. And there's plenty of, and I guess something that also is a facet in this that is kind of outside is the fact that YouTube is a thing and people can watch playthroughs of entire games where they really couldn't before. So that probably does play some level of that probably does have a role in this. I don't know how drastic that role is, but I would say that if you have a $60 game, I think an hour is reasonable enough. Is a reasonable enough time frame for you to play Final Fantasy VII and kind of understand whether or not you're going to like it or whether or not you're going to want to buy it. I think the same thing is true for Doom Eternal. I think the same thing is true for pretty much every $60 game, because you're definitely not going to play. You're not going to buy, and they're not going to release, quite frankly, a $60 game that you can beat in an hour. Like, not without doing some insane like speedrun stuff that is just borderline broken.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe that is interesting to tie the cost of the game to the length of the demo. Yeah, is actually a really compelling idea. So, all right, let's move on to the next question. Thank you, Trent, for writing in and for your kind words. Roman K wrote into us and said, "Yo, CNC, congrats on making 100 of these bad boys. Here's to at least doubling this number." Oh, I think we'll do more than double it, Roman. Thank you. Yeah. Have you ever used a Sony console for something other than gaming or other video entertainment? I remember using my fat PS2's HDD to slot to store weed in high school. Best stash ever. All the best to you and yours. It's funny, Chris, because I remember occasionally seeing pictures, especially of the PS2 when people would buy PS2s on eBay or whatever. I think there was one full of like thousands of dollars that someone bought in cash. There was another that was full of pot, obviously. I can't say that I ever used my console to hide anything, but I was curious if you did. And either way, I wanted to give a shout out to Roman's weed hiding in his PS2.
Yeah. I never did anything really like that. I never used my consoles to hide stuff. I did store kind of backup guitar picks in the Xbox 360 faceplate, because you could rip the faceplate off of the Xbox 360, and there was like some room in there where you could just like kind of put a bunch of like flat shit. And I was like, I always lose my guitar picks. So I'm like, all right, let me just put a bunch of these in this thing, so I'll know like, I know it's in the know it's in the 360.
Right.
If I can't find a single one. But I can't say that I really hid anything. And I wasn't even aware of that back compartment in the PS2 for like a long ass time. It was kind of a bitch to get open, if I remember, like as a kid anyway. Probably not as like a functioning adult, but I remember that compartment being a little finicky.
Yeah, I remember I bought the modem on PS2 for Madden and then for SOCOM, and I ended up actually returning it because I didn't even understand what I was supposed to do with it. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I never otherwise used anything to hide my weed or anything. That's actually a decent idea, but I guess I just wasn't that vigilant about hiding my weed to begin with. Roman, thank you for writing in and for your kind words. Daniel Nichols wrote in and said, "Oi, oi, Savaloys." I don't understand this reference.
Yeah, me neither.
I don't know. Maybe I just said something really horrific. Congrats on the 100 episodes. Colin, you said you're approaching Platinum 100. I am. I'm on 97, or I'm on 98 right now. I have 97. So what has been your favorite Platinum to get, the most challenging, and the one you want to get before the end of the console generation? Thanks for everything, and here's to another 100 episodes. So I actually went through my list and wrote a few down that I thought were difficult and really satisfying. There were 4 in particular that I thought were authentically hard to get, or that were really satisfying when they popped. So a lot more than that were, annoying to get and stuff. But Heavy Rain was a really obnoxious and worthy Platinum to get. You had to play the game. People can go look at a trophy guide for it. It's really interesting. You have to play the game and make very specific decisions going up to certain points, then go back to previous saves, make new decisions, then go back to previous saves, and so forth. And that's how you progress slowly through the game in order to get all the trophies in one playthrough.
That sounds really horrible.
You have to do it in a very specific manner. So I don't suggest that people do it the first time they play such a wonderful game like Heavy Rain, which I think is an awesome game. But once you get through it, if you want to do that for the trophies, then you can play in this, very meticulous way to get them all in one playthrough, which is annoying. And as people know in Quantic Dream games, all of the trophies are hidden. So you can't even see what you need to do.
Oh my God.
In those, you'd have to literally look online. Now you can get around that on PS4. But I did like in Detroit Become Human how they kind of solved that by using that butterfly effect chart in the game to just show you specifically what you're missing and specifically what you have to do for trophies. I thought that was a really clever and unQuantic Dream game thing to do.
Yeah.
I wrote down BioShock. I've platinumed this game 2 times, and I'm going to platinum it again, actually, because these games will now be available a la carte, according to 2K, which is cool, and they have new lists, so I'm going to definitely do it again. I love doing it. You have to play it on the hardest difficulty, and you can't die. You really can't use Vita Chambers, so you have to just save the game manually, but it's such a satisfying game to platinum. There are missable trophies. I wrote down Velocity Ultra, which is a Vita game, which is a top-down kind of speed shooter. It's really interesting, really, really difficult trophies to get. And then Shovel Knight, which a lot of people are impressed that I platinumed. I didn't find it incredibly hard, but I really loved playing it on Vita and getting the trophies there. But Chris, what I want to ask you is, being on a show with a trophy whore such as I, over 100 episodes over 2 years, has the interest in this stuff peaked for you at all? Or do you feel like it's the same kind of thing? I know that you like to maybe get it as an ode to the games that you like or get trophies. I know we've talked about our achievements.
Yeah.
But is it something that you want to start accumulating more of, or is it just still not important to you?
I would say that it's probably still... I still treat it in the same way that I did before, which is just kind of like, if I really love this game, then I'll go for the... And I have to really, really love it on a specific kind of... I don't know if I'll ever really get the Doom Eternal platinum, because it's just kind of tedious, because there's multiplayer ones, and I'm just like, I don't really want to deal with that. But I'm curious... I think I'll probably platinum The Last of Us 2. I say that before we know what the trophy list is, but I would hope that it's not too unbearable. Yeah, I don't know. I just don't feel that urge. I feel like it ruins games for me. Like because I used to do it a lot. I used to like download games for achievements and just like, oh, let me just get all the achievements in Cloning Clyde. and then it just ruined my even gamer score on Xbox 360. I was like, oh, this is the worst. I hate this. It's giving me so much anxiety and it's just a number. I just can't. It's too stressful.
Yeah, I understand that. I've long since stopped letting trophies ruin games for me for the most part, and it's been years since I've gone after trophies in a game I didn't just want to play, which I used to do all the time. And so in Daniel's inquiry, he says most challenging one you want to get before the end of the console generation. The only other one that's outstanding for me is I don't have The Last of Us Part 1 PS3 Platinum, and I actually have the multiplayer trophies in that game done. So when I went back and played it last year for Knockback, my nostalgia podcast, I got some more of the trophies. I got all the collectible trophies and stuff like that, but I still need to get through the game on like New Game Plus and beat the game on hard. I know it's not part of this generation, but that's a trophy I still am interested in getting. I'm not going to play it again on PS4 because that opens up all of the multiplayer trophies again, which take 40 plus hours to get, and I'm just not going to do that. Yeah. But what's exciting about The Last of Us Part 2, Chris, is that with factions being removed from the game, and it seems like they're going to release some factions functionality separately, there will be no multiplayer trophies. But the Last of Us's trophy list is horrible, and my hope is that they just do a better job with this one, because it does matter. It's actually one of the rare games that it's not going to affect sales of, and that I'll play regardless, even if I get 0 trophies. But it's just something that they should probably consider. And I'm really anxious to see the trophy list. The game's in the wild. Some people have it, so they can see it, but I don't know that the list is leaked yet, and it's not on the PSN backend yet. So I'll be keeping a keen eye out for that. Let's see here. Zach Wishnuff wrote in and said, Little C's, congratulations on 100 episodes. Thank you, Zach. Here's to 100 more. In your opinion, what would it take for Sony to lose the next generation? What would it take for Microsoft to win it? All right, Chris, so assuming this console war terminology fits, what do you think Sony would have to do to lose? What do you think Microsoft would have to do to win?
I feel like Microsoft would need to come out of the gates kind of swinging with first-party stuff, quality first-party stuff, objectively impressive first-party stuff. And I feel like Sony, in order for Sony to lose, they would have to really miss the mark on the service angle that Microsoft is playing like a really good hand with. There's a pretty good chance that they could just be completely oblivious to a lot of the ways that Xbox as a platform is doing better service-wise. There's a pretty good chance that they could just be completely oblivious to that. I doubt it. They have to be paying attention because it's their job to pay attention. But I don't know. I feel like Sony's in an okay spot. I just think, and I've said this before, where I feel like the previous generation's success is often kind of a detriment. And this kind of happened with PS2 going into PS3. It's like the PS3 didn't even come close to reaching the PS2's esteem or variety or quality, at least initially. Like the first couple of years was pretty bleak.
Yeah, it was really bleak.
So, and it seemed ever bleaker because of how successful and how monumentally beloved the PS2 was. And I feel like Xbox, because the Xbox One was such a blunder, actually has a bit of an advantage going in because people are just kind of excited for the next thing. Whereas on PlayStation, people are kind of wondering why the next thing is even really necessary. So I feel like in some weird way, PlayStation 5 needs to make a case for itself in a way that Microsoft hasn't. But at the same time, Microsoft still has to make a case for themselves in the realm of first party, which they have not done yet. I know that there's an event in January, but or not January, in July. So that I think is a pretty reasonable kind of assessment.
Yeah, I just don't know that there's going to be winners or losers in traditional terms this time around. It's too hard to determine it.
Yeah.
With Game Pass, with multi-platform sales, with Xbox's games. I mean, even with something, as we mentioned earlier, with Minecraft Dungeons, like that's a Microsoft first-party game that's on PS4 now. So they are making a play to get these games distributed more widely, and I don't think it's going to stop with Minecraft. I've long said, first of all, I've said, and a lot of people don't believe it, but so Microsoft was considering bringing Halo Master Chief Collection to PS4 at one point, and that I wouldn't be surprised for stuff like that to start showing up on PS5. Just because I think that Microsoft looks at them, their salvation as a publisher. Sony is still really contingent on, and their success as a company is still really contingent on hardware, generally speaking. So outside of their movie studios, they have a finance branch, and obviously they make games, but they're just a hardware manufacturer at heart. So it's just a different kind of setup now, and I think it's going to be much harder to determine who the winner and loser is. I think Sony has everything to lose now, and I think Microsoft has everything to gain. We're going to find out on June 4th how this works out for Sony, or at least begins to work out for them. And Microsoft has already showed a lot of its hand, so I'll be interested to see. But I don't know what the win or lose parameters are, because I just don't think it's based on console sales anymore. It's got to be somewhat based on console sales. It's got to be somewhat based on cumulative first and second party software sales, and it's got to be based in subscriptions. And you got to take all of that into account. So I don't know, like 10 million subscribers on Game Pass is a big win for Microsoft. I think we also have to take into account that losers, nobody's really losing ever. Like, you could make a case, like early on when you had, companies like Sega manufacturing consoles, when Sega was really only doing that. Yeah, you could have losers, but Sony has so many tendrils in, like you said, movies and finance and all sorts of other things. Microsoft has tendrils everywhere. They're a software company, they're a hardware company, their software is in every functional PC that's worth a damn. Like, these are pretty ubiquitous companies where, like, in like Sega and Atari just kind of weren't. And there's a reason why those are the companies that died out, and they're the reasons why these are the companies that stick around. Nintendo's actually an outlier in the sense that Nintendo pretty much only still just makes consoles and just hardware for those consoles, and still somehow manages to stay around. It's actually a huge testament to Nintendo's ability to really understand the market. And it makes sense because they kind of started it in a weird way and actually kind of revitalized it in the 80s. It's actually kind of wild that Nintendo is doing so well, given the competition. I agree. They found their way back. It's amazing because those latter Iwata years before he passed away were not good. But he set in motion something that ended up really revitalizing the company, and it is impressive. And they have with Switch what they didn't have with Wii, I think, which was they have the sales of the hardware, but they also have an attach rate and a functioning ecosystem that allows you to retain games, buy games digitally, indie games, and all of this. That the Wii faded. The Wii ostensibly won its generation, but it just faded, and no one really cared about it by the end. You even see that in sales like of Skyward Sword and some late Wii exclusive games that would have otherwise done pretty well in a functioning ecosystem that just didn't.
Yeah.
And I think Skyward Sword and Uncharted 3, at least they both came out at the same time, as I recall, and or around the same time, and I believe that they both sold similarly with a much higher attach rate for Wii, or a much rather hardware sales, I should say. So yeah, it is cool that Nintendo's doing well. It just brings in more competition, and the win parameters therefore become even more nebulous. But thank you, Zach, for your question. Let's move on to Peter Medema, who says, which monkey-based or a monkey-themed game franchise do you prefer, Super Monkey Ball or Ape Escape? So for people that are not aware, Super Monkey Ball was originally a GameCube exclusive Sega-published game by a now long-defunct studio called Amusement Vision. And there was a couple of them on GameCube, and it didn't actually migrate to PS2 or Xbox until 2005 with Super Monkey Ball Deluxe. Ape Escape is a first-party Japan studio game that began in 1999. They're not really similar in gameplay at all. They just have monkeys in them. Super Monkey Ball is like kind of a platform. It's like one of those games where you're trying to keep a ball on top of a platform. Those games really annoy the shit out of me.
Yeah, it's like a physics puzzle platformer, kind of. It's like Marble Blast Ultra was the one that I played a lot. It was like an arcade game.
Exactly. And then Ape Escape is more of an action game.
Yeah.
Super Monkey Ball was actually a launch game for GameCube. I remember that. I didn't buy it. I wasn't interested in it. But what do you prefer, Chris? Do you like Super Monkey Ball or Ape Escape?
I mean, I would say Ape Escape, because Super Monkey Ball, well, I like the style of game it is. It's also not a particularly unique style of game. Like I've said, like Marble Blast Ultra exists. That's like an indie game that's kind of the same general idea. It's a physics-based platformer where you got to keep a marble on a platform and you got to run it through specific, obstacle courses, and it's frustrating but very fun and engaging. But it's also not it doesn't hinge on the theme of monkeys, and like Super Monkey Ball is not particularly like some standout game. But Ape Escape is like such a weird, even just the premise of it, the way it controls, where you attack with the analog stick and the actual action buttons, the face buttons, are used to switch between various different weapons and equipment. That was Ape Escape was the first game I think that was designed solely around the DualShock analog sticks. So it relies heavily on analog stick functionality beyond just walking and moving the camera. And I really adored that at the time because it felt really futuristic in a weird way. It felt like, oh, this is so cool. Like, I understand analog sticks. Like, it makes total sense. This is so cool. So yeah, I prefer Ape Escape 100%. It's just it's way more unique to me as a concept and as a premise and as a game.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like Ape Escape too. And I remember that same thing. We've talked about it before, but just it is a really memorable game because of its DualShock functionality. And as I think I regaled the audience with before, I remember so clearly my neighbor across the street renting it and not realizing that they needed the DualShock. And so he came over and borrowed mine, which I had bought, I think, for Metal Gear Solid that previous year. And so, yeah, both storied in their own way. I think Super Monkey Ball had certainly more releases and I think more success and a little bit more ubiquity. Ape Escape's dormant. I don't think we've gotten I think Ape Escape, the last real Ape Escape game we got was with PlayStation Move. So that was 8 years ago. There might have been some little releases since then, but yeah, I would go with Ape Escape. It'll be interesting to see if they ever go back to it. Spike was in PlayStation All-Stars, obviously.
Yeah.
And he was actually the character I used in that game. So yeah, thank you so much for your question, Peter. John Ballas wrote into us and said, hey, CNC, hope you guys are staying safe amidst this weird time we are living in. My question is mainly for Chris, but I'd value Colin's thoughts as well. Have multiplayer and co-op centric games gone down the shitter this generation? My buddy and I got burnt out on Destiny 2 and don't really like the design of Modern Warfare. I feel like games on the PS3 and 360 had better design philosophies and were generally more fun. Maybe I'm just viewing it through a nostalgic lens. Thanks for making every day great. Thank you, John. Chris, what do you say?
Yeah, I'm sure nostalgia does play some part of it, but I also do think there's a little bit of truth in the sense that games in the 360 and PS3 generation, even multiplayer games that were highly competitive, I would argue were not as polished as current games, but in that lack of polish, it kind of allowed them to be a little bit more experimental and kind of fun to mess around in. I feel like games like Destiny 2, which I love, but I'm also kind of like this season of Destiny 2 is just kind of like not really all that engaging. I feel like games back then were like you had more opportunities to just kind of like, hey, you want to join my custom game and just sort of try and break out of this map or like glitch through this door and see what's behind this thing. And you're like, yeah, and you'd have like a party of people just messing around in custom games. But because, and this actually was introduced in the PS3 generation, like late in PS3 and Xbox's life cycle, Xbox 360's life cycle, where games, specifically multiplayer games, put a very huge design emphasis on progression systems and kind of earning stuff and experience points and like, oh, play this playlist to unlock this weapon or like play this on this weekend to get double EXP. And it kind of disincentivized kind of custom, more chill game sessions. So I do feel like even in Destiny 2, like there's a custom games lobby in Destiny 2 where you could just kind of fuck around on the maps and try and break out of them. But like nobody's going to do that because the time that you spend in Destiny 2 not grinding towards something is essentially wasted time. And I feel like that's kind of seeped into a lot of multiplayer games, and I think it's what leads those games to feel less fun and more like jobs. I still like Destiny 2. I think it's an engaging game. I do think a lot of modern multiplayer games are better in some aspects, but I do think that level of kind of fun and experimentation and just sort of trying to fuck with something and just sort of see what's on the other side just sort of kind of evaporated. Maybe that also has something to do with the internet and just being able to kind of look these things up. But I do think there's probably some merit to them. There's definitely less handholdy design philosophies. There's definitely less of a focus on trying to convince you that you're in some world and more of an effort into just making something fun for you and your friends to mess around in.
It's an interesting thing to hear you say, because from an outsider's perspective, it seems like multiplayer games have reached such a height this generation of uniqueness just from someone, again, who doesn't play them. While I felt like so much of what was going on last generation was tacked on and an afterthought in a lot of different ways. So it's,
yeah. Well, that's definitely true. Like BioShock 2 didn't need a multiplayer, but specifically like the multiplayer franchises, like the big ones that people think about, I think were a little bit more fun to jump into because they didn't feel like labors. They didn't feel like obligations. They just sort of felt like, I want to play this game because it's fun, not because by the end of the day I'm going to unlock some new shiny digital thing that has no real value or real significance and will likely just diminish in value the longer I use it. There's a weird kind of carrot on the stick mentality that it's part of the reason why I really disliked Call of Duty 4 when it came out. Like I played it a lot and I enjoyed it and I played it with my friends, but there was a part of me that really was like, I don't like that the main drive to play this game is to unlock things, because I had always played multiplayer games because I just thought they were fun. And the reward in those multiplayer games wasn't like some carrot on the end of a stick. It wasn't like some new piece of armor. It wasn't some kind of new gun that was better than the guns that everybody else starts off with. The reward that you got for putting more time to the game was that you got better at the game. And then you understood the game better and you were able to play better. And it just felt a little bit more competitively satisfying than games now, which are more designed around progression systems that are like, hey, here's a new shiny thing. Hey, you did this thing. Hey, here's a new shiny thing. It's just, I really think it led to a lot of the fun being sapped out and just kind of had it replaced with this superficial sense of accomplishment. I don't know. It kind of bugs me.
Fair enough. I don't really have any valuable insight into this because that's just not my scene. It's not my bag.
I'm curious as to what people will think of that, because I don't know if this is necessarily a popular opinion, but I just know based on a lot of years of thinking introspectively that this is just kind of how I feel about the way multiplayer is gone.
Well, we'll see. We'll certainly hear. We hear about them for everything. So submit your questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas about that if you desire. Nicholas Schaeffler wrote in and said, hey there, CNC, do you think using fast travel in games should be punished? I've been playing Horizon Zero Dawn lately and realized that in order to fast travel, you need to craft an item. It's easy to do, but it made me think the developers were trying to disincentivize me from using it. Not only that, but by the time I got to a mission where I was supposed to kill Hades, I was 8 levels under the recommended level. I enjoy walking through the many different settings and side activities in the game, but sometimes I just want to experience the story. What are your thoughts? Thanks, and TGIF. Is there a character called Hades in Horizon? I don't even remember that. Chris, what do you think about fast travel, generally speaking? We talked a little bit about this with Ghost of Tsushima, which is going to have fast travel, but I think doesn't have waypoints, which is interesting. I think Fallout 3, New Vegas, and 4, but maybe at least 1 or 2 of them has like a hardcore mode where you have to feed and drink, or feed yourself and drink, and you can't fast travel and you have to sleep. I don't know that I like the idea of punishing anyone for fast travel because it's just a mechanic that makes the game more palatable and easier to deal with. And I think that the best option is to either put these arbitrary and artificial constraints on yourself as a gamer, which we often do. If we don't want to do X, Y, or Z in a game, we just don't do it. And the other thing I would say is that make it an option to have a harder difficulty or to turn it on or off with incentives or not for doing that. But I think that there are certain philosophies in game design. I was going on and on with my brother on one of our shows about degrading weapons and how that's just not fun. It's just not a fun mechanic. Like if you think about Far Cry 2 when your gun would jam and shit like that, or you think about Zelda Breath of the Wild where your guns degrade, and I'm like, this sucks. This isn't fun at all. And I think that I kind of feel the same way about fast travel, where I'm like, walking across what is literally in the game a 50-mile long map to get from point A to point B just sounds like horrible to me.
Yeah.
That's where fast travel comes in, is to like ameliorate that problem. But how do you feel about it? Do you like it? Do you use it? Do you think it should be punished?
I think your punishment for using fast travel is missing out on what the game puts in between the space that you're trying to go to. Like, I think that's, you should disincentivize fast travel by making the maps more interesting and more engaging, and making it so you want to make that insane journey. That should be the design philosophy if you don't want people to fast travel. I don't think you should penalize for it. I think you should just make the thing that people are trying to skip better and less skippable, or less desirable to skip. I think a game like, but at the same time, I do think about Death Stranding and the fact that game has pretty much no fast travel, and like, I never used it, and I think that experience was a lot better off because of that. Even if it was frustrating during the time, I look back on it where it's like, oh, I appreciate that was my experience with that game, and I appreciate the fact that I didn't use fast travel. So I think it depends on what the game is trying to do. If it's just kind of like an open world kind of, playground, there's no reason to feel bad about using fast travel. It's fine. You just go from point A to point B. But in games like Fallout, where it's just sort of something that I'll lean back on occasionally, I don't mind it. I don't think it should be punished.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't know that punishment is in there. I think maybe just giving players more options, and again, putting those arbitrary constraints on yourself to play a game how you want. I know a lot of people play Fallout like that just because they want to in other games. So I think giving players the option is there. But I love fast travel because I just feel like at some point we have to acknowledge that a game's a game, and I don't want to be fucking annoyed. Yeah, it makes sense that my broadsword in Zelda would blunt the more I used it, but it's not fun. That's just not, it's not fun. And so Far Cry 3, or Far Cry 2, it's really a cool idea actually in premise to say like, oh, you're taking over a compound and your gun jams, right? And it's like, that's cool, but this is a video game.
Yeah,
and that's not fun.
There are definitely ways to make things more engaging in that. One thing that like I think is highly underrated, and I know this is a PlayStation podcast, but I know that you have experience with this too, but like in the original Gears of War, where there was like an active reload system, where there was like a point on your reload meter where if you hit it at that it was like a rhythm game within your reload that allowed you to like reload quicker, and you got more bullets in your gun if you hit it. Stuff like that is fun. Because it's like, it's like a neat little, I wish more games copied that actually. But it's a neat little addition to the game that doesn't like bring the game down to like some level of like, oh, my gun's jammed. Oh, my foot fell off. I have to go to the hospital in Fallout land and reattach a foot to my, like, right. There's a level of realism that I think is dependent on the type of game that they're trying to make. And if it fits, it fits. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But it shouldn't be made to fit where it doesn't.
It's interesting because, I do love Gears, and it is interesting. It wasn't the first third-person cover shooter. I really think that a lot of people look at Kill Switch as being that game, which was an awesome game. And so was Gears. It was a very attractive game to me. Also, I still feel like the best advertisement ever for a game, the Mad World ad for that game. But it is kind of interesting that there are a lot of conventions from that series that don't seem to have made their way into other third-person shooters. It almost seems like a lot of that game was so iconic that people were afraid to copy it, because I was always a little confused by that too. I'm like, it's like how I feel about Call of Duty and first person shooting. I'm like, this is such an ideal third person shooter that you'd think that you would just replicate everything this game does, except for maybe just outrageously spongy enemies, which I thought was really annoying. But other than that, the series is very good. I haven't played Gears 5. Gears 4 was the last one I played. So that was the last Xbox One game I played. Yeah,
I just really like that active reload system, and I always like really wished that other games would copy it because it's just kind of fun. I like rhythm games though, so in general, like if I get like a sliver of a rhythm game in a shooter, I'm like, ooh.
No, it's a really nice idea to stop you from. I think it's an interesting idea to stop you from doing what I and many gamers do, which is just reloading constantly.
Yeah,
like you just. Like I shoot a player with 2 bullets. I go down to cover. I reload. I expend another bullet. I reload. It's like
I do the same. I do the same thing.
Eric wrote in. He has an interesting one. This will require some background for the audience. It says, "Hey guys, what are the chances we could see a publisher support either of the next gen systems in the same vein as the Capcom 5? Despite it being rather underwhelming in hindsight, it was a major get for the GameCube at the time. Could you imagine that type of exclusive support from a major publisher in 2020 and beyond? Congrats on 100 episodes." Thank you, Eric. All right, so let me give everyone a little bit of background here on what he's talking about, because I assume most of the audience is a little lost here.
Yeah.
In 2002, Capcom announced 5 games that would come ostensibly exclusively to GameCube. And this was interesting because they were acting as a third-party entity. So it's not unusual for a publisher to support a second-party initiative on a console. We can look at Dead Rising as being one of those games with Capcom and Xbox, for instance, and many other examples of that. But this was being done with Capcom's money, and it was Capcom's choice to do this to support GameCube. It's a little bit unclear to me why Capcom was doing this. I think it had something to do with getting back in Nintendo's good graces and finding their way to bolster themselves at a time that was a little bit dark for Capcom. So the 5 games that they announced were Resident Evil 4, Beautiful Joe, Killer 7, Piano 3, and Dead Phoenix. And so what ended up happening is 4 of those games came out. Dead Phoenix was canceled. It was canceled in 2003. It was supposed to be a 3D shoot 'em up. There is some video and screenshot footage out there of it if you guys want to go look into what it was, but that game never came out. Piano 3 was a third-person shooter. It came out in 2003, and actually it came out simultaneously on PS2 and GameCube, so it ended up never being a GameCube exclusive. Or I'm sorry, Piano 3 was exclusive to the console, never came out to other consoles. Killer 7 came out in 2005 and ended up being a concurrent release on PS2 and GameCube. It was an action game, a really stylish action game. Beautiful Joe, I think everyone knows, that came out in 2003, 2.5D platformer. That ended up coming to PS2 in 2004. And Resident Evil 4 came out in early 2005 on GameCube and actually ended up coming out that fall on PS2. Now, what's interesting about this, Chris, is that if you read about the Capcom 5, it taught Capcom and likely other of its contemporaries that this was a bad idea. Capcom looked at it as a huge mistake. It actually soured their relationship with Nintendo because they started bailing out because they had the publishing rights to all the games and Nintendo wasn't involved in funding these games. They ended up bringing 3 of the 4 to PS2, including one of them concurrently and one of them the same year. People might remember that Mikami himself, who now works at Tango Gameworks, but he was the director of Resident Evil 4. He said that if Resident Evil 4 ever came to another console other than GameCube, he would cut his own head off with a chainsaw. That's what he said in one of his interviews. And it ended up coming out literally like 8 months later on PS2 because all the games ended up selling really softly. Do you remember? You were pretty young at this point, but do you remember this announcement or any of these games?
No, I don't think I was. I think back then I was not paying attention to games media at all. Like I only got PlayStation magazines and like Xbox magazines at the time. I didn't have a GameCube. I didn't have I had an NES, and then the next Nintendo console that I got was a Wii. So I missed like a whole slew. Like I played a lot of stuff obviously at friends' houses and stuff, but I never actually paid attention to developers back. I don't even think I understood what a developer was really back then.
Yeah, so what was interesting because all of these games were developed internally except for Killer 7, which was actually a Grasshopper Manufacture game, and people might know them. Suda is the main guy there, and they made No More Heroes and Killer is Dead and Lollipop Chainsaw and other games. They're still around as a pretty small team in Japan. But the other games were internally developed. Beautiful Joe actually has a lot of people working on it and creating it that ended up going to platinum. So there is a connection there as well. RE4 obviously helped seed Tango Gameworks over at Bethesda. Piano 3 is a really interesting game just because no one remembers it. It sold like shit. And I actually had all these games, so I was supportive of this. I remember it because it was really a big deal when they talked about this stuff, but Capcom bailed out. So to answer Eric's question, I don't imagine that this level of exclusive support will ever happen simply because I think that it ended up blowing up in everyone's face. It blew up in Capcom's face. It soured their relationship with Nintendo for a long time, and it helped PlayStation because they didn't have to bolster any of these games and they ended up getting them anyway. So I remember being a little mad about it because I was still a little bit of a Nintendo fanboy at this time, even though I had a PS2 and played on it. When I remember when Resident Evil 4 came to PS2, I was like, what the fuck? I just felt like it was like such an interesting exclusive for the console to have, and it quickly lost it. So
Yeah.
a little bit of history for everyone out there about the Capcom 5.
Yeah, I had no idea about any of this.
That's why you had me on the show.
Yeah.
to pontificate about stupid shit like the Capcom 5. All right. Joseph Jury wrote into us and said, hey, Colloquial Colin and Croonin Chris. Regarding Final Fantasy Remake, so you're talking about Final Fantasy 7, Would you rather see a faithful remake that stretches over a potential 4 or 5 additional games, or a total revamp of the story that focuses on the characters in Remake Part 1 and eliminates most of the other characters from the original but wraps up the story in a total of 2 games, so Remake and Remake Part 2? Personally, with Nomura's track record with Kingdom Hearts, I feel the more succinct approach may be preferable, as it would bring at least closure to the narrative before PlayStation 6 is in its waning years. Thanks for the wonderful podcast and the delightful Twin Breaker, and keep on keeping on. Thank you so much. I hear this loud and clear because Nomura feels this way, by the way, too. I mean, he's pretty clearly telegraphing in the press in Japan that he wants to get this over with. But I want the level of detail and attention shown in the first remake in all of the additional games that tell the story. Otherwise, what is the point of doing this? But I'm curious what you think, Chris. Do you feel like this could be wrapped up in just one more game?
I mean, if they plan to retell the story in a completely different way, then yes. But at a certain point, you've got to be like, well, is this Final Fantasy VII Remake then? Like, it's almost like you could make a pretty good case that if they wrap it up in the next game and just change a bunch of stuff and eliminate a lot of the characters, there's a pretty good case to be made for false advertising in a way. Because what you're expecting, like, we've had remakes for several years now, and we know what to expect from them. So to call something Final Fantasy VII Remake and to just not actually remake the game, that's a bit of a problem. I too would like it to be succinctly finished, because I feel like, yeah, it would take an absurdly long time. But this is the problem. This is the problem with, like, insanely good quality jumps at the gate. Like, when you come out the gate swinging like that, you got to keep swinging. You know, you can't start a race in full sprint.
I totally agree. And it's what I said when the game came out. Now, I know that I'm only about halfway through, and some people say that the game falls off a little bit at the end. I'll be the judge of that ultimately. But I'm from what I've played of the game, I'm super impressed with it. I'm, like, kind of blown away by it, because it's such an interesting retelling and such a thoughtful approach to retelling a game. And so I think you're right, Chris. You can't just back away from that. I don't know what the solution is. I think that the probably most equitable solution to make Nomura not want to kill himself and to have these guys move on to other games, and they're just so overwhelmed, I think, with things that they have to do. And I think that's a lot of that's due to the disorganization at Square Enix. I just think they're clearly a disorganized publisher in a lot of ways. I think that what you might want to do is produce it internally, but farm it out to a trusted developer, not CyberConnect or anyone like that, but farm it out to some studios that can help you realize it in an appropriate way, maybe every 2 years. You could still have your hands on it. Nomura and his team can still work on it, and you could still have Katase and all these other guys helping along the way, but they can move on to Final Fantasy 16 and Kingdom Hearts 4 and all these other things that I know that they probably want to do over dealing with this game. So I don't think that there's a good solution, because if they release games quickly, I don't think that's going to satiate people, because they're not going to be of a high quality. If they take a lot of time, people are going to be annoyed. But they put themselves in this position, which is why I wonder, even though this game is so good, if remaking Final Fantasy VII by just doing what they didn't want to do, which was to just put polish over the game, redo the art, keep it exactly the same way, what would have been a preferable approach? Because then they would have been done. And now they're never going to be done.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But it would be a shame to spend all of that time in Midgar and then just wrap it up in another 25-hour game. There is so much more to Final Fantasy VII than Midgar. So much more. And they got to see it through. They just do. They have to see it through. All right, Chris. Thank you, Joseph, for your question. Let's move on to Daniel Megan. He says, hello, Sea Lords. Got a question that has been gnawing away at me for months, especially when I'm trying to sleep. Why do consoles not offer some sort of dual monitor support? For example, you could have Uncharted 4 open on one monitor, then your trophies on the other. Or let's say you're playing an open world game, you could have the map open on one monitor while you actually play on the other. As far as I'm aware, I don't think this feature even like this exists. I guess the PS4 just isn't strong enough to handle something like this. Maybe the PS5 will. It would be cool to see all the different ways developers could use this feature. Thoughts? I love this question because I never considered it before. It's funny because he brings up these really practical game-centric things, but for me, it would be like, I would love to watch Netflix on one screen and play a game on the other, or something like that.
Yeah.
I think that would be really cool.
The Xbox tried to do that with its stupid Snap feature, when it was like Xbox Snap, and you could snap Netflix to this hilariously small pixel while you were playing Watch Dogs. It's so stupid. But
what do you think of this?
I don't know if it's really all that necessary. I feel like it's one of those things where it's like, This was a big thing during, I think, 2013, 2015 area, where games were like, hey, guess what? Download the Companion app. And you could look at the map in real time when you're traversing Far Cry on your phone, which is arguably like a lot better than setting up a whole nother fucking TV, just for a goddamn map screen that's going to be lighting up your dark room with whatever color the map is.
Right.
I think it's a fun idea in theory and on paper, but I do feel like in practice. And by the way, this was like a reality on the Wii U. Like the Wii U had map screens on the gamepad. I think the DS also functioned this way, although the DS made a little bit more sense because the screens weren't so obnoxious. I think I've just seen this. I've tried this functionality on games that I can't remember what the games were specifically, but there was one game, I think it might have been Watch Dogs actually, where there was like a companion app where you could download the map and it would follow you in real time and it would give you some useful information, but ultimately it just wasn't as convenient as just opening up the map screen, because now your phone is dead because you've been wasting all this time looking at a map. Or even if you have another TV, it's like, who has a second TV really? And if you're playing on a monitor with a dual monitor setup, chances are you probably have a PC. I don't know really I don't think this is going to be something that people really use.
Yeah, it probably isn't. It reminds me a lot of what we used to make fun of on PS3, which was that there was a printer setup option on the PS3.
The what option?
Which was so weird. You could hook up a printer
to
the PS3, like attach a printer to it.
Why?
And I don't know. So it was one of those things that was just in the menu that no one used, and this might be a similar setup, but it is enticing. I know that they tried to do something like this with the Vita as well. I guess what was coming to mind for me with the Netflix thing, though, is that if I have two TVs set up already to accommodate this, then it's likely that they're smart TVs and I can just watch Netflix that way. So I don't know that it necessarily makes a lot of sense, but I do like the idea.
You can already kind of just do a lot of the stuff normally. Like you don't even really need a monitor. You could do a lot of that shit on your phone. But
this is true.
I do. I appreciate the sentiment. I think it would have been amazing in like 2007, or like 2010 or something like that. But I think now we're so inundated with powerful technology that does, like, oh, I'm watching Seinfeld on my pacemaker. Like it's getting ridiculous.
No, you're absolutely right. I totally agree. My uncle has a fridge that is a smart fridge or whatever, and it's like it's really interesting. He loves it, but it's so funny. Like it like has pictures. You can like upload pictures to it, so it has like a roving
like a slideshow.
Digital. Yeah, it's like, I don't know.
A friend of mine told me a story about how when smart fridges were coming out and he was still living at home, he looked up porn on the fridge just to see if he could. And he could, and he just stood there like befuddled that he actually managed to do it. And he got caught because he was just still stunned. So there was just porn playing on the fridge.
That's awesome. Brandon Watson wrote in. Chris, he says, hey, fellas, congrats on 100, and here's hoping for many more. My question is, what do you think is the best video game movie? I recently watched Silent Hill, and I think that it is the best one, but there isn't really a high bar. Why does it seem so hard to create a good one? My guess is that when you play a video game, you are in that world for tens of hours, and that can be hard to translate to a 2-hour film. With the success of The Witcher on Netflix, which I think we brought up earlier, maybe more video games can get the series treatment. I would love to know your thoughts. Thanks for the great podcast. Chris, do you have a video game movie that stands out to you?
I cannot think of a single one. I know the Street Fighter ones are fun, or like the Mortal Kombat ones are pretty fun, just because they're just so absurd that it's kind of hard not to have fun watching them. Doesn't mean they're good, but I don't know, man. I do think we did just kind of talk about this. I think, pretty sure.
Yeah.
But I think the reason is, you can't condense tens of hours, and in some cases in some games hundreds of hours of gameplay into an hour and a half, 2-hour movie, and no one's gonna sit and watch a 3-hour movie about a video game. Like, you'd rather just sit through a series, because a series is far more analogous as far as, and far more equivalent as far as time spent in that game than a movie is. And I just think it's a better fit in general. I can't think of a movie. I don't think I've even seen the Silent Hill movie.
I haven't either.
Yeah, I didn't even know that was a thing. I know that the Resident Evil movies are there's like a bunch of them somehow. but I heard Assassin's Creed was also pretty bad, so I don't know. Who knows? And that had Michael Fassbender in it too. Jeez.
Yeah, I mean, it's not good. There aren't good movies. I mean, Super Mario, the early 90s Super Mario Brothers movie was this iconic piece of shit that I think scared people off for so long and certainly scared Nintendo. But I will say this. I don't know if it counts, but I think it does. There's a 1989 movie called The Wizard. Have you ever seen that with Fred Savage?
Is that the one where he's like a Nintendo kid or something?
Yeah, he's like a savant, and he's basically going on this journey.
Is that the Power Glove movie? Is that the movie with the Power Glove where he's like, it's so bad?
Yeah, exactly. And at the end, they play Super Mario Brothers 3 in this tournament, and that's like the first time we had ever seen it. And it was like this really awesome movie. And it has a great soundtrack as well, a really great like late 80s soundtrack. So Fred Savage is in it, and Christian Slater, Bo Bridges is in it. So people should go, if you've not seen The Wizard, released in 1989, you really have to see it. It is a really special and interesting movie in the video game industry, and I think it counts. Mm-hmm. So I think people should go check that out.
Apparently, I will say, just before we get off this, apparently people like the Sonic movie a lot. And probably, I would say that it's probably on sheer, like, as far as like how decent a movie could be, it is probably the best video game movie. Which is, take that for what you will. But
I will take that for what you will. All right, let's move on. The late Nate wrote in, said, "Hello, creamiest of the seas." I don't like that.
Yeah.
If you guys could get to determine what the next big new PlayStation AAA first-party IP could be, what would you make it and why? Also, who would you assign it to? And would you assign it to an existing developer or create a new purpose-built studio for it? Budget can be whatever is necessary to accomplish your vision. Congrats on the big 100. Stay safe in these troubled times. So, Chris, if you were the creative director in the Sony ecosystem and you could make a first-party IP from scratch, do you have any idea what you would want to do?
Oh, man. I don't know if I should really say, because I would love to eventually like make a game, but I do think I miss the feeling of Lost Planet, and I feel like that kind of game could do really well if given the proper budget and the proper... Although I guess you could argue Monster Hunter is essentially Lost Planet.
Yeah, sure.
So I guess, fuck me, I guess. Fucking shoot me dead.
Shoot you. Well, there's still a place for multiple games that are similar.
Yeah.
Of course.
No, that's true. Yeah, but I really enjoyed that game for what it was. I think it was like a really fun co-op experience that was like really kind of neat, and even the PvP I thought was like genuinely kind of fun. There was like all these like crazy weapons that were so stupid big and unnecessary that they just. Also, I remember the snow in the first game being like very striking graphically. I don't know if it's held up lately, but I would love to see some kind of combination of like the feeling of Lost Planet and kind of exploring. And by the way, Lost Planet has a grappling hook also. Exploring like these huge planets and like fighting monsters with friends, but something that isn't so tutorial heavy and so like, I don't know, I don't want to say Japanese because it sounds a bit messed up, but like Monster Hunter, I just couldn't get the creepy like Uncanny Valley cat people that look like Blinks the Time Sweeper. Really, really, really confuse me emotionally.
Yeah. Sure. Okay.
But I don't know. I feel there are other ideas that I have, but I would prefer not to leak those to thousands of people.
Yeah, I have a couple of games in the works at Lily Mo. We haven't officially announced it yet, of course, but I think I've talked about it on here. I acquired a minority share of the studio, so I'm basically the chief creative officer of the studio now. And so I won't go into those games, but I don't think that they're going to be AAA style games anyway.
Yeah.
I don't want to make those kinds of games. Everyone already knows we're making a JRPG style game, so I'll say that. But in terms of first party IP, I think that what Sony needs or what Sony could use is something set in space. And so I would like to see something like that as well. Maybe a Mass Effect style game would be even pretty cool. A game that straddles different titles and you can bring your saves over. Because I think that we were making fun of it earlier where it's fine, but like there are 3 first party games on PS4 that take place in the same city.
Yeah.
And that released in the last 5 years on PlayStation. It's or in the same territory, I should say, the Pacific Northwest, because Days Gone does take place in Oregon. But it's just a little much. And so going to another planet or going into space, I think would be really cool. I think that you would create a new studio for that. I would have no problem with that personally.
Yeah, I think that's a really smart idea. Even just a different feel and a different place to be would be pretty ideal. Also, because Xbox now has Obsidian, I think now would be a good time to kind of put focus in maybe an RPG of some kind. And I don't mean like a game like Horizon which is it is an RPG, although like I would say it's more of an action game with like relatively deep RPG elements. A full-on RPG from a Sony first party would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I totally agree there. Either a JRPG, a lot of people want Legend or Dragoon. It would be cool maybe to revitalize that.
Yeah.
Or do an open world, like a true gritty Bethesda or CD Projekt style role-playing game, I think would be cool too. And that would fit into their whole mantra of deep first-party games. I think that they have to start to diversify. My hope when we see this thing that they're going to do next week, that they talk about something like that, it would be really exciting. But they have to consider those kinds of things too, because I think that they do risk, although these games are of a very high quality, I don't think anyone denies that. I do think that they risk getting a little samey with some of these games. And so you don't have to stop making those games. You shouldn't stop making those games. But to make them different from each other, you got to have more interspersed titles. And with the exception of Colony Wars, which was a PS1 trilogy from the first party, and that was by, I think, Sony Liverpool, if I remember correctly, but they don't exist anymore. And then Starhawk, I can't think of really anything from even second party that takes place in this kind of situation. And games in space are popular, so it's a thing that they should consider.
Yeah, I would agree.
All right, let's see. Nathan wrote into us, said, "Hey, Colin and Chris, happy 100. Thank you. Question is mainly for Colin, but have there ever been any of those cheap platinum games that you've legitimately wanted to try? Example, I want to check out a cheap but fun-looking game called Foxyland. However, I was a bit turned off when I found out it had a quick, cheap, and easy plat. Love you. Thank you, Nathan." Yeah, there are a lot of them. There are a lot of games, especially from Retallica or whatever those guys are, that publisher, where they are publishing good games, but they have these awful trophy lists, and I just don't want them. I know that might be crazy, but I just can't have these trophy lists that take 30 minutes on my list anymore. I just don't want them. And 5 or 10 years ago, that would have been a dream for me. I would have gotten fucking platinum trophy in every one of those dumb games. But I think that they're making a mistake. I'd really be interested to know if they were as prolific of a publisher as they are. They put out a Vita game almost every other week. If they were as prolific as they were, if they had more reasonable trophy lists, if it would actually help their sales. Because I know that there's a contingent of people that buy games for easy platinums, but there are definitely people like me and like Nathan that won't buy these games because we don't want the platinum to be too easy. And that's what I tried to do with Twin Breaker. I tried to just make it a list that you could legitimately get, but not easily. Those are two different things. And so, yes, Nathan, the answer is yeah. There are plenty of games by that publisher, especially that I would like to do. Let's see here. Oh, I like this one. TJ Chakan, or Chakin. Let's call him TJ Chakin.
Yeah.
Said, hi, Danish Colin and Saxon Chris. What do you guys think is a JRPG that never made it to a PlayStation console, but would do gangbusters if remade for PS4 or PS5? I guess I'll take this one, Chris.
Infinite Undiscovery.
Yes, of course.
I don't know. I have so little experience with this entire genre.
2 games came to mind for me. I wrote them down on my list. Both of them are on Switch or 3DS, so they're Nintendo games. Octopath Traveler from Square Enix, I think would be interesting. I don't think that you have to remake these games, by the way, or at least this one. That came out in 2018. I was reading about it. I was like, I didn't know this. It came to Stadia last month. So what's interesting about that to me is that means to me that Stadia has some sort of deal, and this game is coming to PlayStation, probably in 2021. It's not tethered anymore. Nintendo didn't publish it outside of Japan, so this is an IP fully owned by Square. So I would love to see Octopath Traveler come to PS4 or PS5. And then the 3DS games from 2012 and 2015, Bravely Default and Bravely Second, these are Square Enix or Nintendo published games, depending on the territory you're in, but they're Square Enix owned IP, created by Silicon Studio, which is a Japanese studio. PlayStation fans might know them because they created the PS3 exclusive game published by Atlas called 3D Heroes, which was a fucking great game. So I would love to see that. Since those are portable 3DS games, they would have to, I guess, remake them in some way, or at least restructure how they're displayed. But those are the games that came to mind for me as a JRPG fan that I always wanted to see migrate over.
Yeah.
I would prefer to see them on Vita, but that's not going to happen. So even though Square Enix is a pretty prolific supporter of Vita, I think that's not going to happen. So Octopath Traveler, Bravely Default, and Bravely Second are the games.
Octopath Traveler was one of those games that I saw that looked really like strikingly good looking, like from an art style perspective, because it did a really, I don't know what the hell they did. Like, I don't know what that engine is or like how they got it looking the way it does, but it looks really surreal. Because it's like 2D sprites mixed with like kind of like a 3D, like almost hyper realistic, but almost also like super stylized kind of lighting engine. It's really gorgeous.
I'm looking now. I didn't know this. I thought it would be an internal engine, but it's actually on Unreal 4.
That wouldn't be surprising. That makes sense to me. That's insane. Looks gorgeous. I don't know. I don't know if this is even a JRPG, but I have friends that swear by it. It's a Nintendo property. Golden Sun is something that I know a lot of people genuinely adore. But I don't know if it's a JRPG. Sun. Is it a JRPG?
It is a JRPG. It's a pretty traditional JRPG. The first one came to Game Boy Advance when I was a senior in high school.
Yeah.
Or about to be a senior in high school. It was in August of 2001. The studio that made it is called Camelot. And I think a lot of people would know them for the Shining Force games. They actually worked on some of the Mario Golf games, which I really like. And they're basically in Nintendo's pocket now.
Yeah.
They basically do sports games, whether it's Mario Tennis, Mario Sports Superstars, whatever the case might be. But Camelot was the studio behind Golden Sun and its sequel, The Lost Age, which came out the next year. And then there was a Golden Sun game on Nintendo DS, people might recall, also by Camelot, called Dark Dawn, that came out in 2010. So yeah, that's a really great pull. And I would love to see that too. Those were really neat games. And I actually said this on a recent knockback. I have such a distinct memory of playing Golden Sun on my GBA, on my Arctic White GBA, in like in class my senior year. I remember just sitting there playing it. Like, you know, when I'm supposed to be paying attention, you know how like the desks have the little cubby things you can put your books in.
Yeah.
And I would just keep my hands in there. And it had the because GBA Arctic White GBA wasn't backlit, so you had to kind of still it wasn't backlit until the clamshell, so you kind of had to keep it still out a little bit. It would have been much more convenient. Now it would be so easy to just stick your hands all the way in there and no one would see anything. It would help you see the screen. But those were heady days.
I could never get away with that because my glasses would always reflect the screen.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Like the second the Game Boy Advance SP came out and the backlight came on, I was so excited. Yeah. And then it was immediately like, what are you doing? It's like, oh shit, no.
That's funny.
It sucks.
Yeah, the backlight ended up being a curse. Dano and Z wrote into us and said, hello, Colin. Hello, Chris. This is for Colin. I can't help but, and actually Chris played this, so I'd like to hear from him too. I can't help but feel that you overrate Horizon Zero Dawn. You act like one of the best games out there. Act like it was one of the best games out there. While I do agree that it is beautiful and it does have interesting combat against the dino robots, what differentiates this game from, say, Assassin's Creed or other bloated open world collections? I myself grew exhausted of this type of game. Also, the story was predictable. I disagree with that completely. Everyone is entitled to their opinion and was just wanting to hear your opinion on a game in a bit more depth. I think a lot of people, well, not a lot of people, I think there's a group of people that do feel like I overrate Horizon. I personally think Horizon is like one of the most pleasant games that I've played on PS4 in terms of the way it plays, in terms of the characters. I like Aloy. I like the world. I love the kind of pseudo Native American Indian vibe going on. I love that it takes place in the future, but has this aesthetic rooted in the past. I love the robotic enemies and how no one knows where they came from. And I won't spoil the story, but I don't think the story is predictable at all. I think the story is fucking awesome. And it really opens up. I feel like you might not know because you stopped playing it, it seems like. Or at least that is what it comes out to me. It says, I myself grew exhausted with this type of game. Maybe you did beat it, but you have to see the game through to the end to understand what's going on. And I think it's really neat. So I still think Horizon's probably top 3 first-party exclusives on the console. And you could make the case, in my opinion, that it's the best exclusive on the console. But that's just my opinion. I've not played it since it came out. So that was more than 3 years ago. And I do have to play it again for knockback. So I might have different opinions on it going back a second time. But I really, really loved Horizon. I'm curious, Chris, what you played it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I ever finished it. It is one of those games that I did kind of feel... I know what he's talking about. I did feel a lot of the kind of Assassin's Creed-y kind of And there are some like kind of 360 PS3 era kind of narrative, or not maybe narrative, but like kind of decisions that frame the narrative, like very kind of predictable cutscenes that kind of play out exactly how you, and like just playing as like little girl Aloy was just kind of like, okay, I get it. It reminded me of like playing as in Days Gone when you had to walk with your wife to the stream to pick flowers.
Oh yeah,
I was just like, oh my god, I get it, I understand.
Emotion.
Yeah, it's like trying to get you to feel something. But I will say, like, from a design standpoint, specifically artistically, I think Horizon's really, really great. I think the idea of robot dinosaurs is pretty. It's interesting because it's such a generic idea, but the way Horizon does it is like really unique because they just look so odd. Like it's not like Transformers Beast Wars, you know, where it's like, oh look, it's a T-Rex robot and it's just straight up a T-Rex. They have interesting looks to them. They look really odd and they're fun to fight. But I know what he's saying when he sees like some elements where it's like, okay, you got to sneak around in the tall grass, and you know, here's this cutscene that plays a little bit predictably. And there are some aspects of the story that I think are predictable. Like I don't actually know how the game ends, but I'm already certain I know where the dinosaurs come from, just based on just how a lot of sci-fi kind of treats this kind of stuff. But I don't think that makes the game like bad. Like predictability isn't necessarily bad. Like Doom is predictable, you know. Like
right,
oh, you can kill. Guess what you're going to do at the end of Doom? You're going to kill a demon, and it's the journey there that matters. And I do think artistically, it's like one of the more sound games. I like the themes too, like you said, like the Native American kind of theme mixed or like kind of like juxtaposed and mixed with this kind of sci-fi aesthetic. It's a cool game. I do have to give it like a proper shot though, because I think back when I played it, I was just kind of inundated with these open world games, and it felt at the time like it wasn't doing enough to separate itself from. But now I feel like I could probably go back and actually play through the damn thing. It's been so long at this point that I'll probably have to start over, but
oh, definitely. There is a New Game Plus patch, I think, too, that I would like to take advantage of, and I know there are a few trophies attached to that, so I might do that.
Yeah, that's good.
When I go back and play the game, but yeah, I do love the aesthetic. I think it's a conflicting aesthetic, which I think is really fascinating. Where the robots come from is interesting. I'd be interested to know, we can talk offline, where you think they come from.
Yeah.
And I do love the idea of there being just this society of primitive peoples that live amongst these robots, and they just have no idea where they come from. And they've learned over time how to either harvest them for parts that they need, or avoid them, or pit them against each other. And they aren't really able to get to the center of the mystery. And it's super cool. And I'm really excited for the sequel because it'll inevitably get one. I think it deserves one. The game sold like 10 million copies or something like that. But
yeah.
I just think that I think it's a really satisfying game. I just disagree with Dano. I appreciate his thoughts here, but I think it differentiates itself. It is a collectathon in some ways. It is a checkbox game in some ways. I like those kinds of games as long as they're done well. And it's not to say that there couldn't have been improvements in the game. I also think it plays really well. I think that Aloy has interesting weapons and setting traps for the robots, and like, I don't know. I really love it. So I'll be interested to see what you think about it when you go back to it one day, Chris, and everyone, of course, can write in with their thoughts, because that game did come out when I was still at Kind of Funny. So we never got into that really here, but we'll do a knockback episode about it in the coming months.
Yeah.
Seth Bain wrote into us and said, hello, Cretaceous, Colin, and Cambrian Chris. My question is simple. Why are there so few dinosaur video games? Apart from the odd Jurassic Park tie-in game and the Turok series, of which the last entry was released in 2008, mind you, there seems to be a tremendous lack of options. Side note, what are your favorite dinosaurs? Mine is the Dilophosaurus, the one with the frill that ate Newman in Jurassic Park. If you give some basic bitch answer like Triceratops, there will be consequences. I don't know. I always liked the Triceratops is an interesting one. What is the one? Stegosaurus, I think, is the one which is probably a basic bitch answer. The one with the tail that's like a mace, basically.
Is that a Stegosaurus? I thought Stegosauruses are the ones with the spiny little backs.
Oh, let me look here. I'm looking dinosaur mace tail. Oh wow, that's actually a search. It is the Ankylosaurus. Yeah, I like that guy. He's awesome. He's got like armor.
That guy, like it's a person.
Yeah, that man.
Like it's Jared from like down the street at the accountant's.
Yeah, exactly. That young man. So Chris, you don't have to. Do you have a favorite dinosaur before we get into the topic?
I like those little ones that, like, do you remember, what is it, the, I forget what the hell they're called. The little ones at the beginning of either Jurassic Park 3 or 2, where like that woman is out like on a beach or something and she wanders off and she gets swarmed by like a bunch of little, oh my God, I'm so annoyed that I can't remember. Little
You're looking up little dinosaurs.
little Jurassic Park 3 dinosaurs. Like I can't remember what the fuck they're called.
I'm sure they'll come up.
What the hell is that name? Compsognathus?
Yeah, I don't know.
All right, whatever. Those little things, because they just
those
look like
those. Yeah.
Yeah, because they look like little just tiny raptors. They're basically like really like they're basically like midget raptors, you know. And they're just like they look cute. It's like, ooh, I'll feed you a little Dorito or something, and they just swarm this little girl and, you know, drag her soul screeching into the depths of hell. It's pretty great.
Yeah, that is good stuff. All right, for the video game tie-ins, yeah, there aren't many dinosaur games. Turok came out in 1997 on N64. It was by a studio called Iguana and published by Acclaim, so both developer and publisher are long gone. Iguana was actually an internal developer at Acclaim. Turok 2 came to N64 in 1998, and Turok 3 came in 2000. Interestingly, Turok 1 and 2 were ported to Xbox One in 2018 and Switch in 2019, but have not come to PS4. I don't know exactly why that is. So the original Turoks are available for you to play out there. Do you feel like we need more of these types of games? Because we were just talking about Horizon, and I feel like that's a natural evolution of that kind of game, but it would be cool to have one of those kinds of games. Because wasn't there a game called, like, it was really bad. I played it. It's like Hunter or Hunted or something like that. That was on PS3 and Xbox 360. That was also a dinosaur, like you shot dinosaurs with a shotgun kind of game. So, would you like to see more of that kind of stuff, whether a return of Turok or something else?
I would. I think dinosaurs are cool, and I know that it's maybe it's just like such a third grade enemy, you know, where it's like, oh, dinosaurs are scary, but it's really just animals, you know. It would be like if you had a game like, oh, let's make a game where you kill like bulls and stuff, and it's like, it's not really that interesting if you really think about it. But I do think they could make it interesting, although I will say, I think the reason why we haven't seen dinosaur games in a long time is because you can't motion capture a dinosaur.
Oh, yeah, interesting.
Because animation in general in video games has started to be less about animating and more about just capturing people doing things. So I feel like in some ways that there's less of an incentive to just kind of invent this thing from scratch, especially when it's something that kind of exists already. It's not like a dinosaur in like Horizon where they could just act however they want because they're just sort of machines also. I do wonder if that maybe plays a part in it. I do know, though, that there are plenty of games that let you mod dinosaurs into them. One of my favorites being Left 4 Dead 2, where on PC you can just basically play as a team of dinosaurs shooting zombies, which is actually awesome. It's one of the stupidest things I've ever seen, but I would love that. I want to play as the dinosaur shooting zombies. That's what I want.
All right.
Or a zombie killing dinosaur.
Zombie.
Why not?
That'd be awesome. All right. Let's keep going. Ryan wrote in and said, C squared, first time, long time. Do either of you gentlemen have a preferred spot or position to play games? For me, I have to sit directly in front of the TV in a recliner no more than 4 feet away. I've tried laying down, playing on the couch far away, sitting sideways, can't do it. I think it stems from my childhood NES days of being cross-legged in front of the CRT, playing Super Mario Brothers. Thanks for 100 great ones. Can't wait for the next 100. Thank you, Ryan, for writing in. Chris, do you have a preferred position or a situation in which you play your games?
No, I think I'm pretty flexible with like what I'm comfortable, like what position I'm comfortable sitting in or just like playing a game. Like I don't really mind. I think because I've played so much handheld and so much console, and even when I was on console, sometimes I didn't have a big TV, so I would have to use my monitor, so it would be at my desk, and then I play my PC at my desk, and I play Vita in my bed. I will say that I prefer to be in front of the TV. I prefer to be at least like 5 feet away from the television at any given moment, at least. But it's not like a ride or die kind of thing where I'm married to that distance. Because obviously when you're playing on PC, you pretty much have no choice. You have to be rigidly sat over over a desk. Which sucks because like even like one of the promises that I remember being so cool about gaming laptops was like, oh cool, so I could just like play PC games in my bed. And it's like, well, no, because the fabric will block the vents and then your computer will melt and explode. So
yeah, fair enough.
So there's really, I don't know. I've never had a distinct need to be in one place when I play a game.
Yeah, me neither. I think I get acclimated to my surroundings based on where I am. So
yeah,
for years I played in bed because I lived with other people, and so I'd play my games in my room, and I would just be in bed. And then when I lived in Santa Monica and had my own apartment, I would sit on the couch with the sit there or lay there and play that way. And then when I came to my mom's here in Virginia while I'm waiting for my house to be done, only 2 more weeks until I can move in, I've been playing in bed again because I play in my bedroom. So I'm really looking forward to actually playing on the couch again because I do like that. I feel a little stymied. I feel like I do everything I do in this room because it's just like my space in this house. But in the house that I'm going to own, or that I do own or will own, I guess we close in 2 weeks, I'll have a space for everything. So I'm really excited to do that. My only problem with being too distant from the TV is sometimes text is so small I can't read it. So I do like to be close if I can be, but I think I'm just going to get like a 75-inch TV, and that will help solve that problem.
I used to have, when I was in high school, I had a TV that was about, like, the screen was about as wide as me opening my hand all the way. And this is 2010, by the way. This is like so late to have a TV like that. But I would have it like just next to my bed, and I had my Xbox like crudely like hooked up to it, and I would just sort of play my games just sort of looking to the side while laying in bed on my nightstand where the TV was. And that's how I played for a while. So that kind of set me up for, anything is better than that.
Yeah, I totally hear you. Everyone's got to find their own positions of comfort. I will say that he makes a good point of the tethered controller days where you just had to be a little bit closer, but we don't have to be like that anymore, which is nice with the wireless controllers.
Yeah.
All right. Douglas Roke wrote into us and said, hey guys, I just became a patron and this is my first question. Welcome, Douglas. So I was thinking about the lack of multiplayer focused games in Sony's first party and how they can solve that. Then I came up with this thought. With the acquisition of Insomniac, would it be awesome if a new Sunset Overdrive came with a big multiplayer focus? I love that game and I feel that it is a franchise with a lot of potential that can help Sony with the multiplayer issue. I would even take a battle royale mode, and would be great to see Insomniac back with the multiplayer games like Ratchet Deadlocked. Anyway, what do you guys think? There are lots of other franchises that can be boosted up with a multiplayer mode. Sorry for the bad English. Lots of love for Brazil. Well, you speak Portuguese, Douglas, so I give you credit for being able to write that paragraph. It's better English than many people in the United States. I don't know. So when Sony acquired Insomniac, they acquired Sunset Overdrive. People are a little bit confused by this because Microsoft still has the publishing rights to Sunset Overdrive. They might expire at some point. We don't really know the nature of that. So I don't know that we're going to get Sunset Overdrive, the original one, ever on PlayStation, but it probably will happen. I think they just need to negotiate that away. I don't know that I like the idea of them continuing the franchise with something that's totally different in some way from the original. You're a fan of Sunset, right?
Yeah.
What do you make of this idea to kind of use that IP and leverage it as a way to cleverly solve Sony's multiplayer problem?
No. I think it's a game that could work with multiplayer modes. I do think it's a game that probably could be fun with other people, but I wouldn't want to see it just gutted and turned into this solely multiplayer activity, because so much of that game, I mean, honestly, a lot of the fun in that game is just the style of it and just how fun it is to just exist in that play space and move around in that play space and just sort of Jet Set Radio, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 grind on everything and like glide and just do insane shit. And a lot of the personality and the animations really made that game. I don't know if you would necessarily lose that in a multiplayer focused game, but I do think that it would be a bit, I don't know. I feel like it's stepping backwards. It would be like if Titanfall 1 had a campaign and then Titanfall 2 didn't, Like there's a reason why they went the other way. And it's because there's more there for you when you have more to do. And I don't know if a new Sunset Overdrive with less to do is the answer.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you here. I don't disagree with Douglas that there is a problem with Sony's lack of multiplayer focused games, and they're trying to solve this with Predator and some other games, but I think they already have the IP necessary to do this. You could just revive SOCOM which I think is probably the best idea, or really refocus on Killzone, or even bring something like, if you want to do a battle royale, it would be interesting to bring Mag back or something like that and do it with that IP. So I think that there's a problem. I just don't think that this is the solution to the problem. I think Sunset Overdrive is a game that could come back on PlayStation. I don't know that it will. I don't know that Sony's really interested in the IP. The IP didn't sell well enough to even solicit a sequel from Microsoft. So we'll see what happens. It's also worth noting that the creative minds behind that game, which were the creative minds behind Resistance, one of them is gone. Drew Murray went to the Initiative, actually. So he's working back with Xbox, while Marcus Smith is working on Spider-Man. Or was working on Spider-Man DLC. I don't know what he's doing now. So just something to keep in mind as well. Thank you, Douglas. Aaron Rawson wrote in and said, hello, Command Colin and Conquer Chris. Video games have a habit of randomly appearing in movies, TV shows, and other forms of entertainment. It's usually interesting to see games we know pop up in other places where they're usually not. Plenty of people know of the scene in Breaking Bad where Jesse experiences PTSD while playing Rage 1, which even featured a fake light gun accessory that he used in the scene. Watch Dogs 1 appeared briefly in an episode of Mr. Robot, a fitting cameo considering the show's subject material. And if my memory is correct, Titanfall 1 makes a small appearance in the Liam Neeson movie Run All Night. My question to you both is, are there any appearances of video games in movies, TV, or other forms of entertainment that stick out to you? Ones that were unexpected or something that just made you smile? I named a few, but there are for sure countless others out there. Congrats on your 100th episode and have a great day. Thank you, Aaron. Chris, does anything come to mind for you with this sort of thing where games from the real world appear in fictional universes?
Yeah. So there was, there are a couple that really stick out to me, but there's this one really confusing movie where there were these two characters that were playing Shadow of the Colossus for no reason, and they're playing it like competitively, and it makes no sense. There's also, my favorite scene is from Dexter, where he's playing Halo 3 on a PC, but like he's using the arrow keys to like aim, and it's the most confusing thing I think I've ever seen. And he's like talking about how like he's going through the motions of like how he stalks a kill, and it's like, and then he get like double kill, and it's like, what do you do? This is the weirdest integration of anything that I've ever seen. There's so many that like I just trying to sift through them in my head is probably like a labor. But those are the two that come to mind immediately. I'm trying to find that Shadow of the Colossus one, because it was like a really weird pair of actors that made no sense being in a movie together.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. Yeah, see if you can find that. The one that comes to mind for me is House of Cards. Had a lot of PlayStation stuff in it once each season, I think, for the first 3 years. The main character would play Killzone in his, like, you know, like he was a psychopath.
Oh, yeah,
House
of Cards. Yeah.
Yeah. And also the Vita's in House of Cards in that famous scene. I tweeted it out a few weeks ago, the video, when he's like, is that a PS Vita? To like one of the kids that it works for one of the congressman's kids, that bald congressman. And he's like, what games do you have? And he's like, I got to get one of those. It was like it was awesome. It's like really one of the most memorable things out of that show. And I like that show a lot, except for when Kevin Spacey went off the deep end and they made the Robin Wright season, which I still have not watched. The other thing that comes to mind for me is on Roseanne, there was a episode where DJ wanted a console. It was a Super Nintendo, but they were calling it, I think, the Super Pretendo, which was funny. Like, I guess to avoid any licensing issues. So those are the two things that come to mind for me. Did you find the Shadow of the Colossus?
I did.
Thing?
So it's from this movie called Reign Over Me, and it's I think, oh my god, it's Don Cheadle, the guy that plays War Machine in Marvel, whatever.
I don't know. You're asking the wrong person.
It's with Don Cheadle and Adam Sandler, and
weird.
And they're playing Shadow of the Colossus. And it's just a long scene. It's a weird, like 2-minute long scene where they're just like playing this game, and it's just confusing. So you can look it up. It's Reign Over Me, REIGN, Reign. Very weird clip. Makes no sense to me still to this day, but it's cool because I like Shadow of the Colossus, so I'll let it slide.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting that developers would let their games, or publishers would let their games sneak into movies and TV shows, usually as marketing gimmicks, but then have them played improperly or not displayed the way they're supposed to be. That's strange. Like with Rage, Bethesda obviously gave them permission to do that. So like, why is he using this weird light gun? And
yeah, it's really strange whenever they like try to mold something. Like one thing I will give credit for the Shadow of the Colossus, it's like he's actually playing it and it's actually proper. And it actually, I guess now that I'm seeing it again, it actually does kind of fit in kind of okay. It's one of the less jarring ones, but it's still weird because that game to me was, like, I always thought that game was like kind of niche. Like, maybe that was like a misconception when I was a kid, but like none of my friends really played it. So it's just really weird to see it in a movie. It's like seeing Cool Spot in a movie, you know?
I would consider it a cult classic. I don't think it's sold exceptionally well, but it's certainly a game that is well respected. But
For
yeah,
sure.
if people want to see some interesting stuff, go look up Frank Underwood playing Killzone and try to forget it. Jacob Spellman wrote in and said, "Hey CNC, every video game mascot from the iconic Mario and Sonic to the completely forgettable Blinks have one thing in common. They're all the kind of creatures that would emerge from a fever dream. Given that Sacred Symbols is essentially one long fever dream that continuously blurs the lines between lucidity and insanity, you two have created the perfect environment for brainstorming the next eldritch creature that can be marketed towards children. Please take the next couple of minutes to create a future icon. Thank you." Thank you, Jacob. What should be a future anthropomorphic animal creature, I guess? Some sort of fucked up thing.
You know, cassowaries aren't frequently used in
I know the
media.
name, but let me look this up.
Cassowaries are those like
bird. Okay.
Yeah, it's those raptor-like birds that kill people for fun. They're obviously
these are in Far Cry 3, I think.
Yeah, they are. They're in Far Cry 3 and they're dangerous in that game too. But they're pretty already dangerous. So I'd imagine making one cute, parentheses cute, would probably be well. He could have knives for a beak, and he can be named Knifey.
Knifey the cassowary.
Yeah,
I like it. Yeah, this is a really hard. Their legs are huge. They have thicker legs than I do.
Yeah, they have muscular talons. Makes no sense.
Holy moly!
They can kick. They could probably kick you through a horse. I think.
What the fuck?
They're really scary. Look up cassowary if you've never seen a cassowary before, because they're nightmarish creatures and they're real. They like exist currently. They share this They share this planet with us. They breathe our air. Like they step on the same ground that we step on.
Oh my god!
And they're eldritch already.
Yeah, they are. You don't have to do anything. There's some funny pictures on Google. There's one of a cassowary over his eggs, like sitting on her eggs, I guess, and their legs. Now birds are obviously the ancestors of dinosaurs. We know that, but you could really see it with this fucking weird ass creature.
Yeah, this thing is basically a dinosaur. Like, you can't convince me. Like, it even looks like, everything about it looks like a rat. Even though it's a bird and you can look at it at its beak and shit, it just looks like a raptor. Just paint it green and it's a raptor. Like, straight up. It's disgusting. And it's hairy too. It doesn't even have feathers. It has hair. It's such a gross creature. It's a damn Muppet, honestly. And this thing is perfect for a mascot.
I'm with this. I like this. Knifey, right? Knifey the cassowary.
Yeah, Knifey the cassowary. And he'll be a puzzle platformer character. He'll be like Banjo-Kazooie, except it's just him because he doesn't need anyone because he's too overpowered.
Fair enough. I like it. Thank you, Jacob. I hope you enjoy that Eldritch creation.
Somebody draw that. I want to see a fully realized pitch for it.
Gareth Honda wrote into us and said, "Hey, CNC, with the talk of Sony creating a new studio last year that was apparently working on a new Uncharted, we've not heard anything since. Do you think Sony is pressing forward with a new Uncharted game for PS5, and when do you think we'll see it? Thanks, guys, for all your hard work. And Colin, I hope you're still managing to get your Five Guys fixed now that you moved to the other side of the US. I am. You can just get it delivered. So no big deal."
Oh my God. You just made me miss Five. I haven't had Five Guys in so long.
I haven't either. I'm actually going to order it tonight. That's what I'm going to do.
Damn it.
That's how I'm going to play it. Let's see. So I want to be clear. The rumors, Sony's never confirmed this, but the rumors are pretty rampant inside media. I don't think it's a new studio. I think it's a new team at Sony San Diego in their space. So if you never, I'm sure no one listening to this, or most people listening to this, have never seen Sony San Diego. It's a huge complex of buildings, and there's a lot of space in there. And I've never been in those buildings and seen it all filled. So my assumption is that they bought these things a while ago. I think 989 might have been in there at some point. And that's where they make MLB The Show.
Yeah.
And so I think that they probably just moved the team into there. I assume that this game, I'm not going to spoil the end of Uncharted 4, but it really does set up a new Uncharted game. I don't know that Naughty Dog is going to make it, so I think that this rumor is true, and maybe we'll see it tomorrow, or not tomorrow, next week.
Yeah,
it's entirely possible that's happening, but I think it's too early. But I do think that you're going to get another Uncharted game. I don't think it's going to be called Uncharted 5 or anything like that, but if you beat Uncharted 4, you know exactly how I think it's going to continue.
What if there's a new Uncharted game and they reveal it and it's like, ladies and gentlemen, Uncharted, and it's just Uncharted 1 remastered, but everybody is Keith David. What's the girl's name? Fuck, I can't remember.
Elena.
I was gonna say Alana, but that's a friend of mine. Elena is Keith David. Photorealistically Keith David. Nathan is Keith David. Everyone is Keith David.
For people that don't know, Keith David is a
he's a voice actor,
African American voice actor.
He's one of my favorite voice actors ever. He was also in the last season of Community. Weird fact, but like
I would love that.
Yeah, I would love it too. That would be excellent. PS5 immediate pre-order, because that'd be such a ridiculous thing to see.
Yeah, it's like introducing Nathan Drake or Keith David as Nathan Drake, Elena, or and Elena and Sully.
Yeah, everyone.
And Chloe.
Every single person. He was he just played himself in Saints Row also, like Saints Row 3 or 4, the one where you're the president. That's 3, I think, right? I don't know. It's one of them. But like he's just straight up Keith David. It's like, oh my God, you're Keith David. And he's like, yes. In his sultry, perfect voice.
Well, I like it. Let's make it happen.
Yeah.
Maybe he can be the voice of Knifey, the cassowary as well.
Such a serious, dramatic voice for that guy. I love it. I would love that.
All right, let's do one more. We're almost out of time, according to the clock.
All right.
Peter Raphael wrote in and said, "Dear Chris and Colin and Colonized Chris, brand new patron supporter, longtime freeloader here. Thank you, Peter, for your support. I've been recently hearing a lot of talk again regarding how difficult Neo and the Soulsborne games are, but how come nobody talks about summoning someone for help when things get too hard? That is how I have been able to beat every one of these types of games that I've played. Am I the only one that does this? I enjoy challenging myself up to a point where I feel like I am never able to beat a boss due to my lack of skill. I enjoy these games but know my limits. I have heard people say that they want to experience these games, but the difficulty walls are just too great. I summoned help for the first boss in Neo and only needed help a couple more times because the game really did seem to get much easier after that, as well as giving me the chance to improve my skills. And beating that game was one of the most satisfying gaming experiences I've had in a long time. You're actually unable to summon help for the final boss. So I got to ask, why don't more people, Colin, including yourself, choose not to use this feature? What am I missing? Is it a pride thing? Then why quit when the games get too hard? Love everything you do and happy to finally support you through Patreon. Thank you, Peter." Chris, did you ever summon help in any of these games, whether it was Neo or the Dark Souls games or anything?
I'm going to be real. I didn't even know you could do this. Like, straight up, this is not something that would... Like, I knew that there were like letters or like messages that were left behind from players, but you can just straight up summon help.
Yeah, I think you can use... I'm not familiar enough with the games to know, but there's like an item you can get that if you use it, it summons, I think, like a random person to come help you in your game. And this is something that I think goes from both the Soulsborne games and Neo. And I personally didn't do it because I know this is such a hang up for me, but I just don't want to play with other people, especially when I don't think there's any way to matchmake. Like, you're just going to get some rando.
Yeah.
And that's even more unappetizing to me. I don't know if there's voice chat or anything like that, but that's what stops me from doing it. I just don't want anyone else in my game. So that's what stops me from
I just don't know if I'd want to be rescued like that. I think it might be a pride thing for me. Like, I don't know. Now that I know that it exists, I feel more opposed to using it. Like, hey, can someone help me, please?
Right.
It just comes across as really, I don't know. Because I feel like I could just get the help necessary just on Google. You know, I could just like look up a walkthrough if I needed to. I don't need to literally like pray to God and then have him send down some kind of wraith to help me, some friendly specter.
Yeah, I don't really want the help either.
Yeah.
So it's not so much a pride thing, because I understand the idea of like, if it's a pride thing, then why do you even bother? But stopping, like, just keep playing it. But to me, it's a little more complex than that, just because I don't want others in my game at all. I just feel so much pressure. Like, even if it's an anonymous person, like a Journey type situation where just like, I don't want this. This is not what I'm looking for in this kind of game. So that's my whole hang up, Peter. But thank you for writing in. Chris, we've gone for over 100 minutes.
Wow, look at that.
It might be a little shorter because Dustin cut some things out, but we've gone, my clock says 1:41:16.
Yeah. So
that's 101 minutes and change. So that was fun. Thank you all so much for submitting all your questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas as you usually do on patreon.com/ColinsLastStand. Your support is essential. Our Patreon's bigger than ever. The show is bigger than ever. We appreciate everyone supporting us for 100 episodes. We will certainly keep the show going. And we always would like feedback and all of that. New audiences are great. So if you tell your friends and family about us, that might enjoy us. And of course, if you listen on free feeds, please do leave us reviews. Unless you don't like the show, then just don't leave us reviews.
Yeah.
All right. That's all we have. Chris, thank you for your time and congratulations on 100 episodes of the show.
Yeah. Pretty wild.
And thank you all out there for your love, your kindness, and your support. We'll talk to you next time for 101, in which the next 100 episodes of Sacred Symbols continues unabated. Until then, goodbye.
Take care, guys.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product of and a registered trademark of Colin's Last Stand, LLC, and is recorded from Richmond, Virginia, and Burbank, California, USA. This show is conceived by, is written by, and is produced by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is Chris Raygun. You can find me on Twitter at NoTaxation and on Instagram at CLS Moriarty. Chris is on Twitter at Chris R. Gunn and on Instagram at Chris_Ray_Gun. Sacred Symbols is edited by Dustin Furman. To message the show online, please use Patreon's DM service. As you know, all of Colin's Last Stand shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/ColinsLastStand. The following names are at the producer level or higher on Patreon, and we are eternally grateful for your kindness, generosity, and fandom. A.G. Rowe, Adam Nix, Ahmad Tamar, Alex Cabrera, Alex Gates, Alan Tremblay, An Unofficial Controller Podcast, Andrew Parker, Anton K, Auntie Kinnanen, Avery Lewandowski, Azan, Barrett Boswell, Bo Clant, Ben, Betty Ann Moriarty, Bjorn Campbell, Blake Israel, Bloody Fang, Boots, Brad Cooley, Brian Chan, Casual Misfits Gaming, Chad Lewis, Chris Buston, Chris Galvin, Chris Moore, Cody Bradbury, Colin Davenport, Colin Love, Connor Gashian, Corey Wyatt, Damon Weathers, Daniel Diamore, Daniel Margaka, Darren Gardner, Daryl E. Naiman, David Chestnut, David John Finnegan Wright, Don Lee, Donnie Nolan, Dylan Burns, Enrique Perez, Eric Finkenbeiner, Eric Harden, Galja, Gamer Filmaholic, George Anthony Nunez, Gerald Pennington, Gio Corsi, Greg Juliffs, Gregory Slovinsky, Homeworld Hub, Hugo's Desk, Infinite, Isaac Wassman, Jason Pettit, Jackson Lastiqua, Jay Getter, Jeff Pollard, Jeremy Key, Jeremy Shook, Jerome Ferreira, Jesse Owen, Joe McPartlin, Joe Finelli, John Schultz, John Cordero, Jonathan Reich, Jonathan H., Jorge Palomino, Josh Bushing, Josh Gravelick, Josh Yeager, Josh M., Josh McKinney, Joshua Smallwood, Justin Wagaman, Carl Tolman, Keith A. Lewis, Kevin Komaki, Kevin R. Lord, Night Draft, Kyle Hagel, Lawrence F. Prokop, Lennon Brixey, Lewin Ray Loper, Mad Mock Media, Miranda Grubba, Mark Boggio, Marius Garson Peterson, Martin Beck, Mason Kodalak, Matt Martin, Matthew Purdue, McDog 18, Megadet, Michael Gates, Michael Vecchio, Miguel A. Brewer, Mike Wayant, Morgan Ashley, Mubarak, Nathan R., Of Fortuna, Organic Produce, Patrick Harper, Patrick Kelly, Patrick Leslie, Paul Joyce, Peter Reynolds, Petro Rose, Phil Crone, Raul Melendez, Ray Leja, Richard Hebert III, Richter 86, Robbie Hensley, Rodney Coleman, Ross Maranka, Ryan Murdoch, Ryan R. Kittredge, Ryan Reeves, Ryan T. Mandel, Saul Balcazar, Scott Lovelace, Sean Chandler, Sean Mason, Shane Rayum, Simon Conception Jr., SL the FMA, Spencer Brand, Stephen Nieder, Taylor Barkley, TB Lightning, Throw 7, Toby Shootman, Todd Paxton, Tony Zuniga, Toothless Gibbon, Travis Plymel, Tyler Bello, Tyler Harris, Vexius, William O. Carroll, and Zach Parsley.